Good evening, everybody. We're just waiting for the panelists to get here, and then we will start the recording for the podcast. There we go. Hopefully everybody's had a good week so far. Alex is here. He's just taking care of some stuff, and then we're waiting on two others, and then we'll be good to go. There we are. Well, now he shows back up.
Yeah, I'm back.
You could have given epic entrance as we went live, but apparently you don't care enough about the fans.
No, I don't.
No. Just like Alex points out to me that I hate everything, he hates the fans.
Because you do hate everything.
I don't hate everything. I like you, don't I?
You hate most things. Yeah, it's true. Begrudgingly so.
This is true. Like, yeah, I mean, if I hated you, would I work with you? No. That's the way it goes. So I guess while we're waiting for people to get here, let's get into the stories that could have made it but didn't onto the podcast tonight. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot there. I mean, most of the tech stuff this week is TGS. And we will be getting into TGS tonight. Aside from that, tech has been kind of quiet. And entertainment has just these little snippets here and there. Geez, my Twitter is just going nuts on my phone. I really should have put that thing on the charger. It's going to kill it. So I guess the first thing to get into was a listener suggested that we talk about this story, which was that the Super Meat Boy devs, Team Meat, are actually have hinted at the concept of working on a Metroidvania title. So if you've never played a Team Meat game before, it's Super Meat Boy and Binding of Isaac are the same company or the same two people, and I believe they had a third game called Mugenics. I don't know if it's come out yet or not, but so somebody actually was mentioning on Twitter that they loved Samus Returns so much, and they wish that Team Meat would make a Metroidvania game, and in turn got a Team Meat reply basically saying, maybe you'll be excited in the next few years. So I mean, I wish I could say I was excited. I played Meat Boy, but I picked up Binding of Isaac and didn't really like it. And most of it's on the story premise. I thought it was weird. And on top, the story really kind of threw me off. And then on top of that, it's dark. And I like that with Meat Boy, but I felt like the same kind of aesthetic was being used for Binding of Isaac. So I was like, oh, okay, well then I don't know how I feel about this one. So I'm like 50-50 on them. I don't care. Any new Metroidvania game I'll try. I'll at least do that. What about you, Alex?
Not really. Not interested.
You haven't even played this. Like, you've seen me play Meat Boy, but that's it.
Yeah.
Let's see, and then unfortunately there just isn't a whole lot to talk about with that one. Oh, and then this is another one a listener submitted. So Xbox has apparently approved the remake of the classic Duke controller. So Alex does not know what we're talking about. For those who don't know, when the original Xbox came out, the controller was rather huge and in turn earned its own nickname, the Duke. In fact, this is kind of a weird confession to make, but I liked the Duke the Duke controller. I liked that it was bigger, but I could see why a whole lot of people had problems with it. So the fact that they're remaking it makes me want to get it for the Xbox One. Oh, and hello, Brinton.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Brenton.
Hi, Alex.
So, Brinton, what are your thoughts on the remake of the Duke?
That's a thing?
Yes. I mean, by Duke, I mean controller.
Cool.
See, this is what makes me the old fart, people. This is really what makes me the old fart. So apparently Xbox is going to, or they've approved the remake of the Duke controller, which was like the original Xbox controller was freaking huge.
Okay.
And it therefore earned the nickname the Duke. So somebody's actually going to remake the Duke controller and I guess repurpose it for Xbox One. But I'm trying to think. Do we have an actual image to show people of what the Duke actually looked like? Basically, if you had an original Xbox in the early days, because they fixed it later. If you had an original Xbox back when it originally released, that's the Duke. So let's see. There we go. That'll help. So there you go. That's the Duke.
Oh, I remember those controllers.
Big honking controllers.
Oh man, that's like a blast from the past.
Yep. And now we're gonna get a remake.
Huh. That's okay.
Somebody's going to remake, or has at least has gained the approval of Xbox to remake the Duke controller, and I think this is actually them. I think this is the actual image of the guy working on it. So there you go. Big honking controller right at your fingertips.
That's okay. That's actually kind of awesome. I just had to, once you showed it to me, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember it. Well, I want to see a prototype, and I think it would be kind of cool. I mean, I'm pretty happy with how Xbox One controllers are right now. I would even say I kind of like favor it a little bit more over the PlayStation 4 controller, but I mean, I've played with like 4 or 5 different controllers almost on a daily basis, so it's kind of hard for me to like say this is my favorite like current gen controller at this time.
That's like 50-50 with me, because if we're talking the original Xbox One controller, then I wouldn't be on that case. I like the PS4 controller better than that. But if we're talking the Elite controller,
well, I mean,
I love my Elite controller, man.
Well, I mean, you let me hold your Elite controller, and I was like, holy crap, this is nice.
Because one of the things I don't like about the original Xbox One controller, it's smaller than the Elite. And on top of that, it's got like, if you get a brand spanking new one, it clicks like no tomorrow. Like everything is so tight on it. So like when you hit something on the D-pad, you will hear it, and the guy in the other room will hear it. Whereas the Elite controller, you don't have that issue, and that's one thing that I will actually say. Like the original Xbox One controller doesn't. I'm not on board with that. I like the PS4 controller over that. But if we're talking the Elite is awesome. The Elite is controller perfection.
The Elite is definitely very, very good. Yes, I completely agree with you.
It's I've had this talk with a couple of people of like it's extremely expensive, and it's one of those times where I'm like, but it's worth it. It's worth it if you've never held an Elite in your hand. It's way worth it. So the next story that we have tonight is actually another Xbox controller. So Phil Spencer has gotten promoted. Phil Spencer got promoted to senior leadership member in Microsoft. And I'm trying to remember if they actually did have his replacement's name, but he will, I believe now because of the promotion, he will not be moving into, or he will not be heading the Xbox division anymore. He will be instead a senior leader, and I think he got I need to bring up the actual story again to see if they actually announced his replacement. Here we go. So, but yay, Phil Spencer, you're moving on up in the world. I never had major issues with Phil Spencer, aside from the whole fiasco that happened before the Xbox One even launched. But aside from that, I haven't really had any issues with him. So let's see. According to ZDNet, as part of the move, Spencer has also received a new job title. He will now officially serve as Microsoft's Executive Vice President of Gaming. So he's probably still in charge of the Xbox division, but he's going to be more the overseer, the person on the board for it. But let's see. Do we have a replacement announced? No, we don't. So maybe they just upgraded him, and that was the way it went. But hey, congratulations, Phil Spencer.
That's awesome.
That's great and good for you. And please, 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 please learn from your previous announcement mistakes with the Xbox One. Please, 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 please learn from that. I would already say you have learned from that, but I'm just saying, you know, whomever takes your place, if they start talking about that, you slap them down. You say, no, we did that once. And Sony made fun of us for it. Because that's the way it should go. And I guess the only other pre-story that I should talk about, because I've gotten a lot of people for this, and I really wish you guys would go over to the other podcast for it. Little bit of a wrestling story. People wanted to make sure that I had heard about the passing of Bobby the Brain Heenan. Yes, I have. And we'll be covering it on Running the Ropes, so I'm not going to cover it here. But yes, I have heard the passing of the brain, and we will be talking about it on the Running the Ropes podcast. So don't worry too much about that. And of course, Romney's now with us. Yay!
Oh,
The band is back together. Kind of. Lesson learned from Drax. Slapping people is okay to get your point across. Yes. Yes, in fact, it is.
that would make presidential debates a lot more interesting to watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
People have asked me if there's anything that would get me into politics. If I could slap Hillary Clinton, I'd do it. Well, actually, no. If I could slap like 100 people in politics, I would do it.
Yeah,
just go through them and then be like, "What did I do? You know what you did."
See, that's when you just need to have them all in a line, and then you're just running down alongside with your arms stretched out.
Oh, that would
I was
be
actually
perfect.
saying we need the reverse initiation for Homer to the Stonecutters, where I'm the guy with the paddle, and I'm just.
Yeah. Although your arm would probably.
Oh wait! Now we must go through the Valley of Despair.
Yeah. Although I imagine your arm would get pretty tired, though. Either way.
That's why you have somebody to swap you out.
Satisfaction. I'd have an adrenaline rush.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like the pure physics of it. You'd risk definitely hyperextending your elbow at least.
I'd be like, dang it!
That's-
Oh, my arm hurts, but I must go again.
That's why you just bring braces. Like you put them on beforehand,
Dang
and you
right.
just go to town. I mean, I would be there with some popcorn, a lawn chair, perhaps. My Nintendo Switch. I would watch.
Either that, or you make like one of those classic Disney cartoon turtle wheels of gloves slapping, and then
Like
you
maybe-
sit back with your Switch, and you'd be like, "Yep, I'm completely have fun here. Just
Yeah.
step up to the plate, bam, 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 bam. Okay, you're good. Next one up."
That would be good fun.
It would be very satisfying. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much all of the pre-stories because we have TGS, and with TGS came some interesting news. In fact, I love the fact that Alex tried to bring another story to us last minute, and he didn't need to because I actually don't know if this was a TGS announcement or not. I couldn't confirm, but it happened around the same time when a lot of the TGS announcements happened. So there you go. Use both hands, and it would be like a marathon with Gatorade, etc., to keep you going. Well, that's why you bring one of those caps that has like the two things of Gatorade, and you suck on a straw. You're constantly getting the electrolytes you need.
See, I think maybe if you like alternate the people you're slapping instead of having like straight lines, like you have them staggered so that you go like one arm then the other, and then just kind of go down the line.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, sounds like a good workout.
Indeed. Actually, you know what? I'd pay for that workout. Is Alex bringing up more change.org petitions? In fact, no, he is not. And you need to up your change.org petition, my friend. He is not listening to you.
There haven't been any stupid change.org petitions in the news lately.
No, there really haven't. Well, there have, but they haven't. But they haven't been geek oriented. So we'll cap it there. I've seen many other dumb change.org petitions because people will just like, could you sign my petition? But it's like, you're an idiot. Moving on. I'm not lending my signature to you being able to do this, that, or the other for really no consequence at all. And that's in a lot of cases, I don't know if you guys have actually seen this. People have actually put up change.org petitions going, I want a petition allowing me to rob a bank.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you very far.
Well, it'll get you someplace.
300,000 signatures, but, well, it's still a crime.
Good Lord. As if people don't already have enough time to waste on the internet.
I'll tell the news to cover my petition again. Or cover my petition. That would be awesome. Today on Fox News, because we have to cover it. It's a 24-hour news cycle. We have a weird change.org petition demanding that the Shadow Blazer bring up more change.org petitions. What is wrong with you, Shadow Blazer? It's almost like you don't want to work or something. And for all the people who are screaming out, no, they wouldn't cover that on Fox News. It's a 24-hour news cycle. They got to cover something.
If they were willing to devote time to the Gendy Tartakovsky test film for Popeye, they would cover that.
Yeah, they really would. All right. Well, it's 8 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get ready to go because we got stuff to talk about. So
right,
when you guys are ready.
Rolling.
I'm good to go.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Okay, bring this all back up, and I gotta turn stuff off. Otherwise, I am going to lose you guys. My internet's been weird all day, and it's probably because of all the clouds and rain and all that fun stuff. Okay, here we go. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday, September 22nd. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drac. I hope everybody's had an awesome week so far. We have lots of stuff to talk about tonight because we had TGS. So we have some tech stuff to talk about. We also have some entertainment stuff to talk about tonight. But, of course, I'm also being joined by my usual panel of fellow YouTubers, fellow geeks, fellow awesome guys in general. And we're going to start things off with Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah of From the Shelf, Romney's Reviews. And now, can I say it?
Yes, you can.
Rhapsody in Cinema. Stephen Romney, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. As Adam can now announce, my new, what I like to call podcast mini-series, Rhapsody in Cinema, is now starting to go up. The first episode went up Wednesday on both VidMe and YouTube. And for those of you wondering, yes, I'm aware I have the 30-minute limit on my VidMe account. I'm applying for verification. I'm already working it. It'll be addressed as when it gets addressed. But yes, now that project is going, and so far things are going pretty good.
Very nice. So yeah, we'll actually even put a link up in the social media so that you guys can see both the trailer as well as the debut episode, which was with Aldo Gomez for Spider-Man. And we're talking Spider-Man 2003 edition? Is that
2002?
2002, yeah. So you guys can check that out already off the bat. And then we also have the Shadow Blazer himself. He stepped out of the shadows just for you guys and you gals. Alex Short, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Happy first day of fall for everybody up here in the good old northern hemisphere. If you're in the southern hemisphere, then it's probably the first day of spring for you. So there you go, inverted climates and weird stuff. I'm pretty tired tonight, so I can't say I
yeah,
don't have
because
a whole
unfortunately,
lot
we're getting to that magical time for you where business picks up horribly, and you basically have to wear contact gear in order to be able to get in the building. And then when you leave, it's like you need a 2-month coma, but you don't take one.
Yeah, because
yeah, pretty much.
Can't. So there you go.
And then we also have a special guest tonight. We have Brinton Volley of Brinton Volley Gaming being able to join us, take some time out of his busiest gaming schedule to be able to join us to talk about the week's events. Brinton, how you doing, my man?
I am doing fantastic, thank you. How about yourself?
Well, I've had a weird week because I started things off where I was just kind of overwhelmingly stressed out, and then in the middle of the week, I'm like, I've got this handled. And then I had to go do my training at the gym and got thoroughly wrecked. And so now if I start to move like really, really weird tonight on the camera, I'm just going to warn you guys, it's because I'm hurting. It's actually gotten to a point where like certain joints, it's like, I can't move it.
Just like certain parts of your body you didn't think could feel pain, you're feeling pain there.
I didn't realize there was a bone there. The one thing that freaked me out for a little bit was for like 2 days, my right arm I could not fully extend.
Oh, that's
so like
bad.
I was kind of forever locked in what I like to call keyboard elbow. So I was like, oh, okay. It's not that I couldn't move it. It's like it hurt like crap to move it.
Believe it.
So that happened, and also my wife got a nice kick out of it the day after, where I moved around like an old man. Like, well, because like my legs were wrecked by the time of that. So like every time going up and down the stairs, I'm like, I don't want to do that. And then it would be you'd be waiting like 10 minutes. If you were behind me going down the stairs, you'd be waiting 10 minutes. Because like, anyway, so I'm an old man. Let's just go ahead and move on, shall we? I think that's the best thing to do here. So let's go ahead and get into the first story of the. I'm never gonna live this down. Let's go ahead and get into the first story of the evening, which was brought into us by a listener and actually had a little bit of bad news, but not unexpected news. So, in a recent interview with studio head Craig Duncan of Rare, this usually gets brought up with whoever is running Rare at the time and whomever is doing this major game of like, basically when will Rare ever return back to its heyday? Like, because that seems to be the one thing that every dedicated Rare fan wants, is for them to return to their heyday and to dig out franchises that they haven't touched in years and see how they would look on an Xbox. And Craig Duncan pretty much puts some finality to that in this interview. He actually answered it and basically gave us the unfortunate answer we kind of expected, which is that Rare really, as it stands right now, has no intention of going back to those old properties and working on them again. In particular, here's a quote from him in the interview. I don't think it's okay to just go make the same game that people loved before, but with up-to-date graphics, audio, and all those things. Just making them again with whatever technology is available today. I think that what Rare is doing the kind of games that only Rare would do. Like no one else would make Sea of Thieves in the way we're making Sea of Thieves. And I think unless you've got an absolutely killer, amazing idea for how you would bring an existing IP, or maybe one of those franchises and do something new with it from a gameplay paradigm or scenario, or something that could actually be genuinely different and innovative, I don't think you could just redo them. I think that would be the worst thing for Rare to do, honestly. It's a pretty long quote, but I want to make sure that everybody kind of gets the finality here. And it's something that we have all expected over the many years that we have covered Rare announcements, is that Rare just isn't the Rare that we all grew up with. It's a new Rare, and they're not interested in reliving the past. They're interested in moving forward. They're interested in moving to the next big project, which for them is Sea of Thieves. So with that, I guess the first person that I want to get into with this, because this was specifically asked by the listener for his opinion, Shadow Blazer, are you like, is this the end of life for you? Are you immediately disappointed that Rare will never relive its golden days?
Not particularly, because again, I have zero interest in Xbox, and even Rare being on Xbox has never been enough for me to go to Xbox. And two, this really doesn't surprise me. I mean, if Rare was truly going to go back to their old properties, they would have done it long ago, since the time Microsoft bought it.
Well, but technically,
the closest we came is when we...
You could make the argument they already did. and it failed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, technically they already did try this. I mean, they tried it with the whole new Banjo Nuts and Bolts game. Then they tried it with the Xbox release for Conker's Bad Fur Day. And, well, it didn't click. And, well, considering a lot of the classics as we know them from Rare were developed by people who have long since left the company, it pretty much makes sense that they don't want to go back to these old franchises.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, I would actually dare say that if you're looking for Rare's golden days, then you're probably waiting for the next thing from Playtonic, which I don't know what that's going to be, but those are the developers you're basically talking about. They haven't worked at Rare for a long time, but now you have a team at Rare that's more looking to make games like Sea of Thieves, and well, I mean, I don't want to judge a game before it's out, but I'm not necessarily all that motivated to play Sea of Thieves. So,
well, you and I both. So I don't feel bad.
so I mean, Brinton, does that disappoint you that they basically said no? We're really not going to go and revisit old franchises.
Not really, honestly. Going coupled with what you and Alex were just talking about. Rare is not the Rare that we had when they made Banjo-Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day. The people who were part of Rare back then are not there anymore. This is a completely, entirely brand new Rare, and it would be silly for them to try and make money off of a generation of gamers who would honestly like to see a resurgence in those titles, but unfortunately they also have to cater to a generation of gamers that are younger than us. And so there are going to be people who are going to be interested in Banjo-Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day, but it's going to be a small population of gamers, and then they're not going to make money and they're not going to succeed. Again, with what Alex said, they've already tried this and it didn't go so well. So that's why they're going forward with games like Sea of Thieves, because they're trying to appeal to all generations of gaming. You know, you, me, those who are younger than you and me, and trying to do that with, again, Banjo-Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day or any other Golden Day Rare title is just not going to cut it. If people truly want to be a part of those titles again, then it's like you said, Drac, they have to go after and watch Playtonic very, very closely and just, pick up where they are going with Yooka-Laylee and with whatever comes next.
Either that, or they can go and get the Rare collection that came out a couple of years ago. That would be another thing for them to do, because if you're interested in Jet Force Gemini and there's really no interest in bringing it back, well, it's on the Xbox One for you. And so at that point, you at least have that. But if anything, I would actually say that, okay, fine, Rare, you want to make Sea of Thieves, that's great. I would actually like to see maybe some more individual IPs from you in the future. My only worry about this is that Sea of Thieves is an MMO. It's literally labeled as a pirate MMO. And MMOs, usually if they fail, it dooms the company because of all the money that has been spent that has now basically gone into a sinkhole. So at that point, I kind of want Sea of Thieves at least to succeed a little bit, so that then we can get more stuff from this new Rare to see what we'd get. But more than likely, given the interest that I've seen in Sea of Thieves, which hasn't been much, this is going to tank, and we might actually just see the end of Rare at the end of this. Like they'll just get absorbed into Microsoft.
Yeah.
Romney, what are your thoughts on this? Do you like with the finality of this announcement? Does it hurt your child? Like, does it hurt your inner child, or is this probably the better decision for them to go down?
Well, speaking as someone who actually doesn't have a lot of nostalgia attached to Rare, I think the only game, they were never really a studio I specifically followed. I mean, I have played stuff like Jet Force Gemini and Battletoads, and that's just off the top of my head. And and maybe Diddy Kong Racing a couple of times at a daycare. But so for me, one, there's no inner child to really be affected by this because it's just a case of, well, I never really followed them to begin with. But as everyone else has already mentioned, it pretty much makes sense given that a lot of the original talent behind these games have since jumped ship either to Playtonic or to Retro Studios. So you already have the lack of the original team guiding that reasoning. But then the other factor is, as Brenton mentioned, is that you've got a whole new generation of gamers to appeal to, especially considering that Rare was relegated to making Kinect titles and titles with the Microsoft Me knockoffs for who knows how long. And so if it's very much, it would be in their best interest to make a clean break and to have the talent at Rare now to try to make a name for themselves with their own new ideas, rather than trying to basically re-release and relive off of past successes, because we've seen what happens when studios try to do that. I mean, off the top of my head, Sega went through that phase for a while. Konami is trying to do that now, where they're trying to bank on the nostalgia to get you to pay money. And honestly, I think it's the best decision to not try to constantly drudge up the past and just try to move forward with something original. And I do share your concerns where if Sea of Thieves tanks, well, that just means they'll be stuck making Xbox Live arcade titles forever if it doesn't completely break them down as a studio.
And that's really my worry. I'm not even worried that they would get, because here's the thing: if they were starting off with a couple of smaller games, that might be the better way to go. The problem is you picked one of the most costly genres to be able to walk into because of the sheer amount of money that you have to pour into it to be able to make it worthwhile. And granted, I mean, they're probably, I can't even really think of an active game right now aside from maybe Pirates Online, but I think that's since gone under. They basically corner the pirate MMO market. But the other problem, at least in my perspective, is in the trailers and the features that they've shown at E3, there just hasn't been enough to get you genuinely interested in picking this up, especially with an MMO, which is a huge time commitment. I mean, at least 2 or 3 of us on this panel can state how much of a time commitment an MMO is, and therefore an average consumer has to consider that.
Yeah, especially considering that it's only coming out on PC and not PC and Xbox One, which that could be a way to argue of, oh, if they made it for Xbox One, then they could be trying to edge their way into the console
I thought
MMO
it was
market.
Xbox One exclusive.
Looking at the IGN article, they say it's coming on PC.
Oh, really? Okay.
I am going to double check that as well, just to be safe.
What you're basically saying is Steve Bloom lied to me at E3 because he was actually saying Xbox One exclusive.
I have both Xbox One and Microsoft Windows, so it's probably one of
the functionality between the two.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that explains it. It's just IGN doing the weird ad thing where it was advertising one version but not showing both. So, yeah. But even then, that's...
Again, like one thing that we've kind of said, and I think it's actually just a really good wrap-up for this, is like, it sucks that this is the direction that they've wanted to go. But, the fact that they don't want to revisit old franchises, and we actually didn't even mention Perfect Dark, how that flopped, and that was a launch title for the 360 for crying out loud. When they've revisited, because they don't have that original team there, they haven't been able to bring back what people loved about it because they didn't understand it. These were new guys that were brought in via the Microsoft acquisition. So that was not in Rare's heyday. And so at that point, it might have been a worthwhile thing for them to take on smaller projects and then move up into something like Sea of Thieves. But unfortunately, you kind of covered it, Romney, is they basically got brought into the Kinect division, made a bunch of games there. The Kinect didn't do well, and therefore they were kind of credited also with that failure. And now this is basically their last-ditch effort to be able to survive as a studio. So it's one of those things where I think we can all agree we want this to be at least as much successful as it can be so that they can go and make another game, and maybe that'll have more of a springboard success for them. So with that, let's go ahead and move on into the next topic that we have tonight, which is TGS coverage. So I tried to cover as many of the TGS announcements that I could find, and thankfully you guys reached out to me on a number of them. But most of the big announcements, from what I've been able to tell, were from either Sony and/or I think Capcom had one major one, and then maybe the other one was also in conjunction. Square Enix. Square Enix also had some announcements there too, and a little bit of a tidbit that I don't know if it was actually mentioned on the TGS floor, but it happened in the middle of all that coverage. So I actually want to start there. And that would actually be, so around the time TGS announcements were starting to flood through, we actually saw that people had apparently discovered an emulator of some kind within the Nintendo Switch. And given a couple of days later through hacker forums and things like that, we eventually figured out what it was. Apparently, there's a nice little homage to Satoru Iwata built into your Nintendo Switch. So every July 11th, I think that was the exact day of his passing. You will actually see July 11th. You will actually see a weird new game come up on your Switch, and that is NES Golf. And NES Golf is actually the first game that Satoru Iwata ever worked on. And so they did that as a nice little built-in homage. A lot of people actually were taking that as, oh no, there's a built-in NES emulator into the Switch. And apparently that's been disproven as of right now, that it only includes the NES Golf and even some nice sound tidbits of Iwata-san actually saying things. So they actually did put those in as well from major E3 announcements that he's done before. I can't remember the exact word, is like Sachushikun or something like that he used to say at the Nintendo Directs. But they've been able to do that as kind of a nice little homage to Satoru Iwata's legacy. And I just want to get reactions from the panel before we get into the other major announcements of TGS. I think this is heartfelt. I think this, like, I'm probably going to play NES Golf once. I'm really not a big fan of sports games, but I like the fact that they went back and they said, what was Iwata-san's first game that he ever worked on? We don't know. I mean, he could have worked on something before that, but this is apparently the first one he worked out with HAL Labs. I like the fact that they did that, and the fact that this is only going to show up every July 11th, as to say, you know, always remember that this is the day of a great man in our company passed on. So I like the fact that that Nintendo had the foresight to do this as a nice little legacy to Satoru Iwata. But let's go ahead and open it up to the panel. So Brinton, what are your thoughts on NES Golf forever being in your Nintendo Switch?
So I'm just gonna be short and simple with it. It is extremely heartfelt. I think it is a nice little tribute to Iwata-san, just because. And I was telling Nathan this the other night when we were discussing it, and I was like, you know, I hate that he never got to see the success of the Switch and Breath of the Wild at the start of the year. It crushes me that is something that he was never able to see, because I feel like Nintendo has done so well this year. Not like just with the Switch alone. I mean, yeah, Breath of the Wild did also very, very well, but there are several other games that have come out, obviously, since March 3rd that have just made the Switch absolutely incredible. Obviously, all in my opinion. So again, I think it's extremely heartfelt. I wish he was here to see it all, and I'll probably play the game, like the golf game, once, because like you, I'm not a huge sports ball fan. So
exactly, let's play sport ball. You know, the one with the ball.
So and the thing is, when July 11th rolls around next year, I'm probably even going to forget to be on top of it. So, you know, just being completely realistic, I can't expect myself to remember something, you know, a year from now. But I think it's cool.
Well, and the other thing to consider, and I'm not diminishing this by any stretch, but Satoru Iwata was beloved in Nintendo. From what I can tell, like he was the guy that a lot of people in there wanted to be the president of Nintendo, not just Yamauchi-san, who he was the successor to. And a lot of that stemmed from the fact that we've covered it many times on the podcast, but he was a working president. I mean, he would go in and help with the R&D development for games. He would go in and help with the work to be able to give people that proper break, as well as be able to get the game out. And his love and passion always showed within anything that he himself was working on, especially like any HAL Labs games. Earthbound. I love the fact that when Earthbound came to the Wii U's Virtual Console, he was the guy that got to announce it. I love the fact that when the NES prequel to Earthbound happened, he was the guy to be able to announce it. The only thing that kind of makes me sad is I'm pretty sure he was one of those guys that was spearheading Mother 3 coming here. And I know a lot of Mother 3 fans that would have loved to have seen that happen and would have also loved to have seen Iwata-san be able to announce it. So that's the sad part there. But I have a feeling we also will have some other dedications in the coming years to Satoru Iwata.
Yes.
Alex, what about you? What are your thoughts on NES Golf in the Switch?
Well, it's a really not only heartfelt, but really clever tribute to Iwata, considering Golf was one of the first games he ever worked on for Nintendo. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's what a fitting idea for it. And the fact it only appears on July 11th, which is the day he died, I think it's a nice way to kind of remember him on that particular day when that day rolls around. And also I think it goes to definitely show you that definitely everybody at Nintendo really respected Iwata so heavily as their president. And I can see really why, because I think Iwata really is the first president to really kind of bootstrap and rise up the totem pole through the company. Yamauchi inherited it from the family line, and Iwata, I believe, is the first to not be a part of the Yamauchi family. For a company that's been around as long as Nintendo, that's really impressive.
Well, we should probably also say he befriended the Yamauchi family. Like he was a very close friend to Yamauchi-san before he passed on, and a lot of the reason he became the president was because Yamauchi looked at him and said, "That's the guy." So I mean, we're talking about a guy who got to know everybody within the company and was just friends with everybody in the company.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, because he was a working president, so obviously he was very hands-on, right? There's kind of the risk I think you run with companies like these where you're going to get somebody who's more into the business, in tune with the business side, and doesn't understand all the real work that goes into making video games. They're just worried about pushing the deadline, about punching the budget, everything else. But I think because Iwata had that experience, he probably was able to work very closely with the developers to make sure that they knew how they can stay in budget, how much time they need to develop a proper game, and when the right time would be to finally release it.
Yep. Romney, what about you? What are your thoughts on this subtle homage to Satoru Iwata within the Nintendo Switch?
That's definitely a nice way to pay tribute to someone as influential as Satoru Iwata. I also like the fact that it's not even like, oh, it'll just appear on the Switch. You actually have to imitate Iwata's bow that he would do at the Nintendo Directs while holding the Joy-Cons, and then it'll play one of his sayings, Chokusetsu, which translates to directly.
That's what it was.
And so that will be indicating that you've unlocked it. And the article we're going off of, and this is something that Aldo tried bringing to our attention as well before we came on, is that it may be embedded into the Switch as what is often called an omamori, which, for those who don't know, an omamori is basically a good luck charm that can be bought at various Shinto shrines across Japan for various reasons. The idea is that if you carry it with you, it'll protect you or give you good luck. And so this could be a way of Nintendo not only honoring the legacy of Satoru Iwata, but also kind of acknowledging of, hey, let's acknowledge the legacy and hope that his spirit, for lack of a better term, can guide the company's success going forward. And thus why they have this shrine, for lack of a better term, programmed into the Switch. And so it's definitely a nice gesture on their part to acknowledge, hey, for better or for worse, this guy is the man who more or less helped make Nintendo what it is today.
Not only that, but I also like a lot of there was one other comparison that I liked earlier today that got made, where basically if you look at Satoru Iwata and what he actually did with Nintendo, he was more interested, like he could be a good public face. I'm not saying that he couldn't be. In fact, a lot of my favorite moments are with Iwata. But the guy was more interested in more being a behind the scenes kind of guy rather than being the public face. And so I like the fact that they through behind the scenes added this subtle little homage to him. And I also like that. I actually hadn't considered that concept, that it could have actually been something like an Omamori for Iwata-san. I like that even better. But it also gets me thinking, and maybe you guys will have a different point of view on this, but when, heaven forbid, when Miyamoto passes, I have a feeling that when that happens, they have to go all out. They have to do a much more in-your-face kind of homage to him being the creator of Mario and Zelda and a lot of hallmarks. But the way that they've approached Iwata, I think, is more appropriate to his character within the company than Miyamoto. And I'm not saying Miyamoto didn't help behind the scenes, but he also could be the face of the company and was a little bit more, dare I say it, at certain things, charismatic. But it makes more sense to put Iwata in the behind the scenes stuff deep within the hardware, that he would work his butt off of on instead, rather than when Miyamoto passes, when we will get tons of homages in Zelda and Mario and any other ways that we can make that work. So I like the way that this was also done and the execution of it more so than just the fact that they put in the first game he ever worked on. And that's why, again, I say this is not over. Nintendo has enough love for him. We're going to see a lot more stuff. I mean, if I remember correctly, you guys can correct me on this. There's an Easter egg for Iwata in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, there is.
I don't know. Is there really?
Yeah, there's an NPC in Hyrule who was supposed to be Iwata-san.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he says.
Mm-hmm.
I personally never found him, just to reiterate how incredibly large the world of Breath of the Wild is. But
yeah,
somebody,
it's not like an anagram of his name either. It's a new name.
Yeah, and somebody just happened to run into this NPC, and and the rest is history. Just posted it on the internet, and people just put two and two together.
Yep. So I love this announcement. I love the fact that we were able to unearth it. And the only thing I haven't been able to figure out is if Nintendo confirmed that this was the intention. I believe since it's been confirmed, because we have so much information on it. But I don't know. I would also like to see Nintendo go and say, yeah, we intentionally did this because we love this man and we want him to be forever immortalized. Which he will be. That's the bottom line of it. But let's go ahead and get into the other major announcements of TGS, because this is a long list anyway. So we had that happen, and again, I don't think that's a TGS thing, but I wanted to bring it up. We also got a major announcement of Left Alive from Square Enix, which is going to be based in the Front Mission universe, and it's going to be helmed and directed by Armored Core director Toshifumi Nabeshima, and also features character designs by Metal Gear character designer Yoji Shinkawa, mech designer Tatuyuki Yanase, and who also worked on Metal Gear and Xenoblade Chronicles X. So you already have some major talent that's being worked on, and I'd just like to point out, Metal Gear? Metal Gear. Guys, a guy got out. A guy got out of Konami. A guy got out of Konami! Oh my gosh! And he isn't fake. Well, he probably left way before all of this crap happened, so that
more
that
than
might be
likely, yeah.
Well, yeah, given that he was an artist and not a programmer, he very well could have been contract work and not necessarily an employee.
Yeah, false alarm, guys. It's not like somebody got out of the horrors that are Konami now. My guess is he'd left a while ago.
Yeah, it's not like The Great Escape where they got out of Tom, or was Tom the one that got caved in? I'm not sure. I haven't seen The Great Escape. Tom was the one that got,
yes, because remember, Metal Gear Solid 3. I don't want to spoil it because Alex will eventually see it.
That it's technically a spoiler for The Great Escape, but then again, It's a classic movie. So moving on.
We have the announcement of Left Alive, and like I said, it is based in the Front Mission universe, but a lot of the art looks very Metal Gear. We also do have the Monster Hunter World release date. Aldo should be very excited about this. It will be releasing worldwide January 26th, 2018. for the PlayStation 4 as well as PlayStation 4 Pro. There is a deluxe edition which will feature a bonus armor set, emote, emblems, and hairstyle. Also, they had the major announcement on the TGS floor that one of the first DLC characters for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, I want to say 4, but it's not that, is Monster Hunter. So the Monster Hunter character will be one of the first DLC characters for the fighting game. We also got the first trailer for the Shadow of the Colossus remake. I already know of at least a few fans of the podcast that will be excited about that. We also got Square Enix announcing the re-release of Final Fantasy IX for PS4. It literally released that day, and they HD'd up the cutscenes and the character models, as well as put in boost features, which would include a high-speed mode, option to turn off random encounters, kind of fulfilling that Bravely Default model now, as well as a booster that lets you automatically master abilities on weapons and gear that you've equipped. So that was a nice announcement for them to have. Zone of the Enders Second Runner is going to get a remastering with VR support, which kind of makes up for the lackluster collection that came out, which, broke Second Runner so bad.
It's Konami. Don't get excited yet. For all we know, it could be a broken version of the Second Runner with VR support that is also broken.
I totally agree here, but I like the fact that at least we're possibly getting possibly getting a fix. And then we also got the Square Enix announcement that Noctis will officially be joining Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, which was expected from a lot of Final Fantasy fans that Noctis would make his way in there. And this one I love because of the Twitter controversy that happened. Dragon's Crown Pro got announced for PlayStation 4. So if you guys have never played this game, it was a heavily controversial fantasy beat 'em up that came out for the PlayStation 3, and I think eventually made it. I don't think it came out for Xbox, but it was
Sony exclusive.
It was Sony exclusive, but it was controversial in the fact that the character designers were ripped a new one by social media or social justice warriors for the looks of the sorceress and the Amazon in particular. Basically, they like big boobs and big butts, and they cannot lie. And so now you're going to get Dragon's Crown Pro. I'm sure there's a dozen people that are going to be pissed off at that. That game is making an appearance again. We're also going to be getting a Japan Studio VR Music Festival, which is awesome. And then also another PSVR game that's going to be coming, which is a cat collecting sim called Neko Atsume. I think that's how you say it.
Neko Atsume.
Atsume. Thank you. And then also we did get I think that covers all of the major announcements for it. Sorry, I'm just doing this in a list so that we can go over the stuff that we liked and stuff that we didn't like. That's pretty much all of the major announcements that came out of TGS. So let's just go into our thoughts. So Brinton, out of the announcements that you just barely heard, what caught your eye? What made you excited for what they had at TGS?
Yeah, so the ones that caught my eye the most were Shadow of the Colossus, because that is a game that has been recommended to me more than I can. That game's probably been recommended to me more than Final Fantasy VII, and then Final Fantasy IX, which is also another game that has been recommended to me more than I can count. So, yeah, those were the two that stood out to me the most. Will I get to playing FF9 anytime in the future on my YouTube or my personal time?
I can at least say I hope so.
Well, on my YouTube, I'm not quite sure yet. Maybe in the far future, because I would actually like to play through it on my personal time first, instead of what I did with Final Fantasy VII, trying to approach it blind, because that obviously, well, I mean, I'm doing a pretty good job for being blind. It's just
no, you are.
It's just I ensued, and I've been like going back through my Let's Play because I am about to start recording it again, so I can finally finish the game. But I just kind of sit there with a better knowledge of how not MMOs, just how RPGs work, and I'm just like, oh, I'm cringing at my decisions because I literally don't know what I was doing. And then obviously Shadow of the Colossus. I didn't see the trailer. It just catches my eye now, just because I was kind of like, I didn't
Looks
realize.
really good.
Yeah, I'll watch it after this. I just didn't realize that the Tokyo Game Show happened, so I was a little caught off guard by that. Did it get a release, or is it just a trailer? Like a release date? I mean,
Well, for
right
Final
now,
Fantasy,
I think it's set for 2018 right now. It's got a very vague release date right now for Shadow of the Colossus.
okay,
Final
yeah.
Fantasy IX literally released the second the announcement happened.
Yes, which I did see. Right now, I didn't purchase it right away just because there are other games on my backlog that I want to get to first. Plus, I did just start up a semester, just started another semester of school, so it's not like I have a whole lot of time for personal video gaming, since I am trying to get Final Fantasy VII done. But Shadow of the Colossus will probably just be added to my list of games that I will play in 2018. So I'll just sit patiently and await the release date, and probably put in a pre-order when that time comes. But that's what stood out to me the most, just because, like I said, they're games that have been recommended to me more than literally I cannot tell you how many times people have told me to play these games individually. So I'm looking forward to finally being able to sit down and properly play them.
As for me, the major announcements that actually did happen with it were, I am intrigued by Left Alive. I'm not necessarily saying I'm on board with it just yet. I don't know the front mission games, so I have that worry, obviously, that I would be missing out on stuff. But from what I can tell, they have said it's set in the universe. You don't necessarily need to know what's been happening in the universe up until that point, just because the art looks really good for it. Very Metal Gear Solid-esque. So I'm very happy about that. Monster Hunter World, I was already considering playing this, but the fact that it's just a release date, I can't say I'm too excited. Final Fantasy IX for PS4 obviously caught my eye. Noctis joining Dissidia was awesome, yet not really unexpected. Really, the one that caught me off guard was the Zone of the Enders announcement, and it was just because I literally, given all of the crap that Konami has been going through with Kojima, I figured any project involving him or involving something that he was working on was scrapped. They were not even going to touch them because, I mean, look at Metal Gear Survive, guys. It's such a staunch departure from what we've ever expected from a Metal Gear game that I can't necessarily even call it a Metal Gear game, at least in my mind. So the fact that they actually said, yeah, we'll go ahead and do this remastered second runner, but we'll also add in VR support. This is why I'm kind of hoping, Romney, is that we will get a retooling of it, because you have to do the VR support anyway. But you could, I mean, here's the thing. You could be right. It's just the crappy collection remake that got done. That and Dragon's Crown Pro, because I did like Dragon's Crown. I still have it, and eventually I will convince Alex to do a Let's Play of it. Just so we can have some fun.
And one good thing I found about Dragon's Crown Pro is that it actually has crossplay with the PS3 and Vita versions, meaning you can import your save data.
Exactly. So that's even more amazing. Alex, what about these announcements did you find awesome?
Well, the only thing I can say that I really am interested in is Shadow of the Colossus, because I've probably been bugging you for us to do Dragon Shadow with that game for a while.
You're not the only one.
And I must admit, I've never played Shadow of the Colossus myself before on PS2. I have seen the game. I have seen the game because I know a friend. I saw it first when a friend showed it to me. He showed me the final Colossi, and then on my own, I went and listened to the soundtrack, and I absolutely love the soundtrack for Shadow of the Colossus. It's truly some of the best video game music you'll probably ever hear ever. And
I've heard snippets here and there. And I thought it was epic.
So I think maybe finally time for me to play the game for myself for the PS4.
Well, sadly, you'll only be able to play it on the PS3 right now, but who knows? Maybe in the future. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Is it really
to people?
It says PS4.
No. There's a PS3 collection.
Yes, I am.
So there's a collection
I'm getting
game that gives you Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, but I get what you were hinting, my friend. So I was saying.
So I'm gonna get, as no big surprise, people. Yes, I'm gonna get a PS4 in the not too distant future.
And all it took was a dot hack game to get him to consider it. So there you go. Now we know how to get now we know how to get things done for the Shadow Blazer. Is get some dot hack on there, and he's perfectly fine.
Welcome to the PS4 family, my friend.
Exactly. And Romney, your thoughts on the TGS announcements? Was there anything in there that stood out for you?
Well, from the list on the IGN article, I mean, again, I'm excited with the release of Final Fantasy IV for PS4, especially some of those additions, because as someone, I mean, it's still probably my favorite game of the entire Final Fantasy series.
You mean 4
and
or
so
9?
having those 9.
Yeah, I was gonna say
4.
You
That's
said
awesome.
4, yeah.
Well, to be fair, 9 on PS4. Can you blame me?
No, I can't.
But, yeah, point being, though, that caught my attention because it's a case of, I can replay this game, but I can turn off the encounters if I just want to revisit the story or if I just want to go in a couple of battles. And Noctis being in Dissidia, again, no real surprise, but it's pretty cool. Yeah. I'm excited for Dissidia NT because I like the Dissidia games.
What's funny is this was actually the first time I'd heard that Dissidia NT was coming here. Everything that I had read up until that point was saying that it was going to be arcade exclusive and it was only going to stay in Japan. And then I after seeing the announcement, I had to go over to GameStop anyway, and the manager over there actually confirmed that Dissidia is getting a US release date. And I was like, holy crap, that's amazing.
I feel like that was similar to the Pokken Tournament release.
Yeah.
Because I think that was very much an arcade game, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, it's coming onto Wii U.
Well,
and it's like, what?
I don't know if it got an arcade release, but they were actually talking it might not have left Japanese shores.
Well, it did get an arcade release in Japan.
Okay.
And so that's the key thing, is that the reason it's porting to consoles for Western is because, well, the US doesn't really have an arcade market anymore. And so...
Which really sucks, but that's like a conversation for an entirely another day.
Yes, that's a whole... You could teach classes on the disparity between the two countries' game markets. And so the fact that we're getting it on a console is pretty cool. As I've been going through Final Fantasy 15, Noctis is an enjoyable character. And so it'll be cool to actually get to play as him in this updated version of Dissidia. And one release that was announced, it's not in the IGN list, I found it through a different website, is actually a title that I'm excited for, mainly because I'm interested in the franchise that it's based on. And that is a sandbox game based on Hokuto Shinken, known here stateside as Fist of the North Star. The company behind the Yakuza Kiwami games and the Yakuza and games like Yakuza 0 are basically making a sandbox third-person adventure game based on Fist of the North Star. Yes, and I was looking at the...
first I've heard of it. That's amazing.
Yes, and I was looking at some of the gameplay clips. It is pretty much exactly what you would expect in a Fist of the North Star game. You see all the techniques. You see the guys exploding. And so it looks really fun. That's one title I'm excited for. I hope it gets a US release. But granted, Fist of the North Star titles haven't the greatest track record here in the States. So fingers crossed.
Well, and another sad thing, at least from TGS's perspective to me, that actually irritated me, because I'm not saying that it's a bad thing they announced these things, but the way that they announced it, I mean, we got actually some really cool announcements, but they were VR. Which is basically, so apparently there was actually a Dragon Ball Z Goku training app that was actually on the floor at Tokyo Game Show. There was also a Gundam one where you actually could go into VR and be able to pilot a Gundam. There was even an Evangelion one where you could pilot an Eva and take out angels. And this is like, this is all sounding so awesome, but it's VR. I don't care about VR. The other thing, too, that I should also mention that I actually forgot in the list, because it's not in the article that we have, I believe at TGS, they also debuted the first trailer of the Alicia Vikander Tomb Raider. So that's actually now up on YouTube. I don't know if anybody's actually been able to see it. I have not. But
I watched it without sound. Why I did that, I'm not quite sure. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think it's just because I really, really, really love Tomb Raider, and I was so happy with how well received and how well done this reboot has been that I was like, kind of like, still, I don't know. I got like nervous about it because I'm
Mhm.
excited for who is playing Lara Croft in this reboot film.
Which you got to see.
Yes, which I did get to see, but for some strange reason, I was like, I'm not sure I can watch it in sound, so I didn't, and I still haven't. And I will probably eventually will,
Yeah.
but
Because trailers
Yeah.
go better without sound.
I don't know why I do that. Sometimes I'll just like watch things without sound, and I'm just like, I have two perfectly working ears.
Well, I mean, it is a good experiment to basically see how trailers try to catch your attention visually, especially if you're wanting to study how to edit trailers and editing in general. It's something worth considering is basically, okay, how does a trailer elicit a reaction without sound as opposed to with? It's something to consider.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, with you saying that, I could already kind of get off the bat that they kind of deviated from Lara's personality, because in the 2013 reboot, she's a little bit more, I don't want to say shy, and timid is not quite the right word either, but she isn't the Tomb Raider yet. She becomes like the Tomb Raider, like the Lara Croft that we have come to learn and love in the sequel, Rise of the Tomb Raider. The first game is more her like finding herself and realizing I can be a survivor, I am strong. And then Rise of the Tomb Raider is her literally being a badass, like the entire freaking game.
It's her being a badass, but also seeking closure. You know, like,
Yeah, and
because one of the cool things is like the first game was, holy crap, my dad was right, and now I feel like crap for that. And so the second game is the entire basis of, I'm sorry, Dad, I should have trusted you. And that's actually become a really good basis for the story. I haven't seen all of the trailer. I've seen pieces just because, you know, IGN or other websites will have moving trailers going on. And I do like the fact that Lara, at least in the trailer, looks inquisitive, which does reflect the reboot Lara to me more than the original Lara. Because they actually tried to show her like at a table trying to solve a puzzle kind of thing. And I like that. If they stick with that, I'm okay with it.
yeah, I did notice from the trailer though that they are kind of setting up the sequel a little bit in this movie, which, I mean, obviously I haven't seen it, so I can't say whether or not that was a good or bad idea, just because Tomb Raider started with them immediately going to the islands off of Japan, like immediately going to where they thought Yamatai was. So whether or not introducing Trinity in this film, like, again, I'm not sure if that was a good or bad idea, but I can give a better opinion when I see the movie in March.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I kind of hope that they are approaching it from the angle of the games and the movies aren't connected. So you could tell the story differently per the medium. Because also, given the medium that you're working with, storytelling works differently. So with that, final thoughts before we move on into the next, the first portion of our entertainment portion of the show. Because that's pretty much all of the TGS stuff that we can cover. And TGS was amazing for some, but unfortunately, some people I do know actually were missing out on stuff. Final thoughts? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and move on. So the first story that we have is a silly one because it was brought up by a listener, and the listener, I'm not making fun, I promise, but you made it out to be a lot worse than it was. And so like that's why in a lot of cases I had to go and do my homework on the actual punishment that happened here, but bring people up to speed. And what's funny is I've actually seen a lot of the cable news media cover this too. And it's been funny to see them either their heads implode or they just sit there and go, what? So Netflix pulled an episode of a children's program called Maya the Bee after apparently a complaint from a mother who spotted a rather interesting drawing on the trunk of a tree in the background in that particular episode. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this up, and you guys can decide for yourselves what that looks like.
All I can say is, where was I and why was I not watching it?
Brinton, can I get approval? Can we officially call this a boner?
I guess technically be more of a Woody rather than a boner.
Well, I was gonna say it might be a little bit like thicker, but that's just me.
Ooh.
I don't know why I just said that. Moving on.
You prefer your bat boners. What can I say? Or I'm sorry, your patriotic bat boners. We covered this in a Devil May Cry video.
Yeah.
So you guys can...
Yeah, I don't want to talk about boners on the internet anymore.
Obviously, the mother was rather perturbed seeing this, but it's one of those things where the media has not taken the same reaction that she did. In fact, I've actually talked to a couple of other parents who saw this image and didn't have her reaction. They instead just kind of went, "What? Did I see what I did?" And then, like, when the child ran off, they rewound it and went, "Wow, anybody will try to do what Animaniacs did." You know, like, because this is one of the, I can't help but figure that this was one of those subtle ways to get something past a censor. And if for people who don't believe that there are, like, I get it, the Marvel series are pretty dark on Netflix, but there is a censor. When it's labeled for kids, and they actually have the distinction on Netflix that it's for kids, there is somebody that goes in and makes sure that it's kid appropriate.
Yeah.
And in this case, it just feels like somebody was trying to get something past them.
Well, actually, when you really look at the series, because it first aired on the cable channel Sprout, so it very much was a series meant for kids. It's not so much, oh, someone tried to get past the censors in the terms of trying to be like Animaniacs. More likely, it was maybe a background artist putting something funny on a model that they didn't expect would actually be visible. It's something
or forgot to get rid of, yeah.
Yeah, it's something that actually happens pretty frequently with animation, both 2D and 3D. And so, more likely, that's probably what happened here, is that the modeler who modeled that particular part of the tree probably didn't expect that part of the tree to be in view of the camera, and, well, hijinks ensued.
Exactly. And actually, another thing that happened when this story got introduced, I eventually saw this on Facebook. One of my friends who's more of an artist than me, he actually just basically put up this image on my Facebook and just said, yeah, it doesn't matter what you're actually drawing. It's still satisfying as a veteran artist to draw a penis and boobs.
Yeah, although there's a comment on the Variety article that IGN pulls it from.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty funny. It says, it's unlikely kids will be able to see the wood for the trees.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that was good. That was good, my friends. So, yeah. Now the reason that I brought this up specifically, so when this was brought up to me, the listener actually said that the series had got yanked. No, it was just the episode that got yanked from Netflix, and I have a feeling it was basically more along the lines of, I mean, if this series is still active, then they'll say, can you do an edited version? If not, then it's just going to be, no, this episode will never be accessible on Netflix. So I don't know if it's since it did actually have a run on a TV station. I don't know if it's still an active series.
Well, given that it's something in the background, that's something that could probably be easily edited without a lot of effort. It doesn't look like they'd have to go into the model. It's just something, because I mean, we've seen Disney do it before when they had to edit some of the questionable Easter eggs put in The Lion King. The edit itself wouldn't be that tricky. You just maybe put some blurs to basically break up some of the symbology here to make it so that way you don't have a complete shape. It's something that could be easily done. I mean, if I had the means, I could probably easily do it within Photoshop within a minute. It would be crude, for pardon the pun, but it would be a case of it's not a hard edit to do.
Indeed, it is not a hard edit to do, I would think. We're not helping this out. We really aren't.
No. I'm sitting here and enjoying every moment. Like this is like probably the best conversation that I'm listening to, and not like initially like I'm surprised, Romney. This is stuff that I usually initiate, so I'm just sitting here and enjoying the show.
Well, it was either initiated or basically spent the entire segment quoting George Takei and basically just doing one long
yeah, because that's really all he could do on that. I mean, I saw it. I saw the image when it got submitted, and I was just like, People are still trying to be like Animaniacs and trying to get stuff past the censors. Like, as a dad, I literally looked at it and went, okay, I don't need to necessarily worry about my 2-year-old daughter asking me what that is. But at that point, like, I could see where some parents might be concerned with it, but, well, I also know of some parents that got concerned when Yakko was having his little conversation with the teacher and saying, conjugate? I've never even kissed a girl. Oh, no, that's okay. I'll conjugate with you.
Yeah, and again, that's very much, those are like very much two separate things, because with Animaniacs, it's intentionally like more lowbrow humor, well, not lowbrow, but potentially more for the adults, whereas here, much like anybody who's had to work on what is basically a very tame, toothless children's series, you find ways to keep the work fun. And this just may have been a case where maybe the modeler...
That's exactly what this is. Somebody was trying to keep the work fun, and just while trying to finish this thing out, he was doodling, and it just came out that way. And at that point, I'm sure that animator for one moment was like, "Ooh," but most of the time he was like,
yeah, especially when you consider that you have different departments, because modelers and animators modelers aren't usually the ones animating or composing the shot, so it could be a case where maybe it didn't look that way when they were composing the image until it was finally rendered, given that when you're trying to frame it and set the lighting and everything, you're not having it fully detailed, and so it could just be one of those simple things that the artist didn't intend for anyone to see in the actual episode, that as it was rendered just popped up there.
It's also just one of those things where, to the parents who are freaking out about this, I get your viewpoint on the matter, but I would also strongly encourage you to go watch some of these YouTube videos where they actually show some of the other phallic imagery that is shown up in stuff from like Disney. Because you will be surprised. This crap happens a lot more often than even you might expect. And I don't think it's ever intentional. It's something along the lines of, we were doing that and then we inadvertently sent in the wrong cell, or something like that. It's never intended of, I'm going to teach your preschoolers a lesson.
Well, no, I mean, I just find this super, super funny, just because there are things that their children are watching on YouTube that are far worse than this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Although I do have to say, the way Adam said the whole teaching preschoolers lesson, I'm just like, okay, that needs to be a G.I. Joe villain. Can we make that happen? Can we have a G.I. Joe villain where that's his motivation, is to corrupt children's cartoons? I'd watch that episode.
That would be pretty fun. I think
I'd do the voice, but I can't do Cobra Commander. So, I can do that voice. I just can't do Cobra Commander. Otherwise, I would give you that voiceover work right now, Romney.
Yeah.
So,
okay, internet, make it happen.
Exactly. There you go. Either that or make me do a collaboration with Angry Joe so he can do Corporate Commander and I'll be the evil animator. Final thoughts, because here's the thing: the only thing that we can do is get punny with this, because it's just that's what it is. Final thoughts.
My final thought is, the only thing that, like you said, the only thing we can do is get punny, which is what you all exactly did. So, moving on.
That's also what that did too.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of.
Sorry, go ahead.
Ridiculous to. I think it's a little ridiculous to get so frantic though over something that was probably on screen for maybe a second.
From what I understand, it wasn't on that long.
Really,
I'm surprised that there was a parent. I'm sorry, Alex. You keep going.
Yeah, I really doubt any kid is gonna have the kind of depth of field vision to see something that's pretty faint in the background. It's a 2D image scrolled onto something. Their attention's going to be focused on the foreground. And even if they do see it, they're not going to think anything of it. They're really not. No one's going to...
Thank you for pointing that out, because I mean, that's one of the things that I think is enjoyable about Animaniacs, going back to it as an adult, because those jokes, they sailed right by me as a kid. Like a lot of that wordplay humor. It's actually one of the reasons I love wordplay humor. But it sailed right past me, and then I come back as an adult, and I have this whole new experience to be able to hear these jokes and actually understand what they are. That's kind of how I'm looking at this. It's like, the kids who actually got subjected to this, They don't understand what it is, but 10 years from now, they're going to go, huh, I never noticed that was there.
Pretty much. It's just like the parents raising a fuss now is just going to put attention on it. Then the kids are going to get on the internets when they play with their mom's phone while they're in the shopping cart, and then they're going to find this out. Then they're going to have their giggle snicker moments because that's they're hearing this stuff on the playground anyway.
Yeah, it's very much the Barbra Streisand effect on a smaller scale.
Pretty much. And yeah, my final thoughts on this are, yes, in fact, it is a penis. Moving on. So, just in case people didn't know what we were talking about because of all of the runaround and innuendo that we've done, yes, in fact, it is a penis. So moving on to the next story, and this one we technically have covered, but now we've had more analysis on it by the New York Times. So people might remember a couple of months ago, we covered a story involving an interview of Brett Ratner, who came out in the interview and actually said that he believed, or at least it's his belief that due to sites like Rotten Tomatoes, that's why in a lot of cases some of these movies flop as much as they do when they could have done a lot better. In particular, his quote was, "I think it's the destruction of our business." Is Brett Ratner's quote for it. But now we've actually, after the summer has been done and all of the money tallies have been put in for the movies, we can actually acknowledge that Hollywood has in fact had a horrible summer. And in fact, somebody actually went back and said you can't actually find a slower summer in the last until you go back 20 years. 20 years ago was how slow summer was. That's the last time that this ever happened. And a lot of Hollywood right now, as well as some analysts, are even attributing that to the fact of we have sites like Rotten Tomatoes that are that people will immediately go to them first before they go see the movie. And because of said score that Rotten Tomatoes gave, they would not go and see the movie themselves, and thus not even give the movie a chance, as it were. So, I mean, in particular, we have Ratner's sentiment on the matter. The article in particular that we're reading from doesn't actually interview anybody else on the matter. They take some stuff that they've been able to get from analysts. But yes, this has been a particularly bad summer, and a lot of people are crediting that towards Rotten Tomatoes. Now, obviously, the Rotten Tomatoes people, what's the parent company? Fandango? Yeah, Fandango. Fandango is obviously saying, no, we don't believe that's the case. In a lot of cases, this is just a really great early warning system to be able to help people out with that. But we don't intentionally hold people back and say, don't go see the movie. If you want to go see it, you're going to go see it. And there's nothing depriving them from that. In fact, I would actually dare say we even made that argument too, is like some of us actually do go and see the Rotten Tomatoes scores, but it doesn't necessarily influence our wanting to go see the film. And the other thing too that I do like about the article is some people are actually saying what I have been saying on the matter, is that maybe the fault isn't necessarily with the critics. It also could be with the film companies and the fact that they are putting out inferior products compared to what came before. Mainly on the basis of you want to beat the hype train, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to put in your 100% effort because you're just fulfilling the hype train. So I'm just going to go kind of open this up for a discussion here. I don't think Brenton was here when we talked about the Brett Ratner one in particular, but I'm going to start with you, which is, do you think Rotten Tomatoes actually is the more problem in this case, or do you think it might actually be Hollywood, or just because people are not going to see movies?
To be completely honest, I feel that it is a combination of Hollywood and people just not wanting to go see movies. Rotten Tomatoes is like any critic company. They are doing their job. They are reviewing films. They are a very well acclaimed group of people who deserve the respect because they have very straight to the point, this is what we think of the movie. And people have been following them for a long time. And there may be times that I may not agree with the score that Rotten Tomatoes has given a particular film. And I don't always, and I will go and see what they think after I have seen a film. But to be completely honest, if somebody's like, I'm just going to use superhero films as an example. If somebody's going to go to Rotten Tomatoes to see their review of like Spider-Man Homecoming, like, I'm sorry, but you're an idiot, because of course they may or may not give it a good review because it's a superhero movie. Like, those are just bundled up and mass produced because that's just the type of era we live in right now. That is just the type of films that are being produced and filmed and edited and put out into the world. You don't see a whole lot of hardcore contemporary, my feels are getting punched over and over and over again type films. Those are the films that you're going to see Rotten Tomatoes best reviews and best scores on, but people don't necessarily go to the movies to see those type of films anymore. And so,
well, in the case of Rotten Tomatoes, I mean, they probably go see them. Like you brought up the fact that they went to go see a superhero film, but I think Romney can also attest to this too, is that eventually when you've seen enough of the same formula over and over and over again, it's not really like you can add too much to it. And if you're getting paid to go see it, eventually that's going to wear on you, and eventually you're going to have more of a bitter personality towards it. I think you even said, Romney, when you said you were going to stop doing Marvel movies, unless they were with us or whatever, that was one of your main reasons why.
Pretty much. And as other film critics I've talked to about this, at this point, those movies are critic proof. So it's very much doing a review, especially if you're someone like us who is trying to make it through YouTube, make it on the internet, unless you're able to get a review up ahead of its release, then there's not really much point in getting a review up because they're critic proof. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's saying it's good. It's a case of, it's like a wall of sound where everything just blends together and it's just white noise.
Exactly.
And that's completely understandable, because I mean, I am looking at this not from like a movie reviewer. In fact, I'm not really that much of a video game reviewer either, because most of the games I let's play are just games I have already played and have a very special place in my heart. So I just share my own personal experience of the game via YouTube, and then in the credits I just talk about, here's some additional like things I didn't get to talk about the game, why it's special to me, like other random funny stories, just to fit in as much as I can before the Let's Play is like officially over. So I mean, you do make a very, very good point there with what you just said. After a while, one's personality and one's annoyance could definitely come across in the review. I'm just still, however, as we have in like some of the reviews that we have done in the past, it's just very obvious that there are certain studios that don't really put in the effort to make something of high quality. And so, I mean, they're
more interested in the quick buck rather than hard work. Exactly.
And so, somebody at Rotten Tomatoes has the right to say they were just interested in making a quick buck. This is not good. Sorry, not sorry. And so, so I mean, so again, tying that in with people, because I realize I'm starting to ramble a little too much, is that how about you? I understand that reviews come out beforehand, so for a reason. However, read them after and go see the movie first and formulate your own opinion. That's what I do, and I feel that at that point I can read that review and be able to say I agree and disagree with what is being said, instead of, oh wow, they're so right, I'm just going to go ahead and now just not watch this film. But also, additionally, going to see movies is not cheap.
No, it's really not, and
It really isn't.
And so that could be also another reason why people just aren't going to see movies, because personally, I want to use that money for video games. I mean, I love movies, don't get me wrong, but sometimes there's just a game I really, really want, and I'd rather spend movie budget money on video games.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
mean,
my honest opinion.
the funniest part is like with me and Alex, like when we actually go into movie vlogs that we want to do for the year. I mean, given the price of tickets and all the stuff that you want to be able to get while at the movie theater, because now it's going to the movie theater is more of an experience than anything. And so I would actually dare say, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but we like one of the things that goes into the process of picking what movie we're going to do and what movie we're not going to do is we're both interested in it. If one of us is interested, then fine, you can pay the $10 or whatever to go and do it. And, you know, this year we introduced individual vlogs so that people could see Alex's opinion as well as my own. But in a lot of cases, it is if like only one of us is mildly interested in that film, we're probably not doing it because it's just it's not worth it money wise to take that kind of a risk. But I would say that part of the, I think you're partially right, Brenton. I also do think that there are not only studios but also directors that are more interested in making a quick buck than they are staying true to source material. Especially in superhero movies. I mean, look at the movies that tend to get that kind of a criticism, and it's for the most part it's mostly accurate in those respects, where we actually can say like, yeah, you wanted to do this big moment just because you wanted to be able to have this cash in, and since it was a superhero film, you knew you were going to get that. In fact, I would actually dare say, correct me if I'm wrong, these were the complaints we were leveling towards Star Wars before Episode 7. Disney cashed in on Lucasfilm because they wanted to make a quick buck on childhood nostalgia to be able to make Star Wars. And that's why in a lot of cases, a lot of us, me included, were apprehensive at Disney acquiring the Star Wars license.
Oh, I was apprehensive too. And especially after they announced, we're doing Episode 7 and then consequently 8 and 9. And obviously they announced 8 and 9 before 7 came out. And I was like, well,
and they also announced the possibility of side movies too. It's just like,
oh my gosh, they did. I forgot about that.
I don't even want to think about any other movies until you do Episode 7, because I don't know if this is going to be a worthwhile endeavor or are you just going for a cash grab?
Yeah, Disney had a lot of faith in themselves. Let's just say that. I personally liked Episode 7. I thought it was well done. And then I loved Rogue One. Holy crap, that was amazing. So I'm excited for Episode 8, obviously, of course. But going back to when that news was fresh, it was a really terrifying thought, because it's like, not a fan of, because you had those groups of people who are like, not a fan of the prequels, don't destroy the original 3 from when our parents were our ages. And
yeah,
so it was just, I wouldn't say it was a scary time. It was just more of a, okay, we're twiddling our fingers here. And it's very not like, bruh, it's tension I don't need.
Exactly. Romney, we've kind of gotten your thoughts on this already, but like on the review aspect, but would you agree or disagree with the article that Rotten Tomatoes is the big cause of why this summer did badly?
Honestly, I would say not, because people kind of overemphasize and not really take into consideration what Rotten Tomatoes is. It is an aggregation site. It takes a bunch of different movie reviews of the same film, lumps them together, averages out the scores to basically come up with a percentage. And honestly, studios and directors being like, oh, Rotten Tomatoes gave bad press about our movie. It's like, well, make better movies, because honestly, what is the fact that Hollywood had a whole summer? This is the market deciding what it wants. This is the very thing we champion with almost every episode. The audience is voting with their dollar, especially considering how expensive movies are. If say you're a father with 3 kids, and say you're like a divorced parent, and so you get to see them for the weekend. You need to decide what movie you get to see. And so naturally, you're going to look at the reviews and thinking, oh, okay, I'm obviously going to have to buy the kids popcorn or candy or soda. Which movie am I actually going to be a good investment of my time and money to justify the expensive ticket prices, including 3D, including the concessions?
adding on to that, you may not know anything about the movie, but your kids have already decided what movie they want to go to. So you're going to go to sites like this to see whether or not that movie is appropriate for them. You know, especially like if you have a couple of young boys in there, they might want to go to the super violent film, and you don't know if you necessarily want to take them to that. So you're going to go to sites like these to see whether or not it's worthwhile for them to go.
Yeah, and honestly, like the fact that Hollywood and also DC fanboys, because let's face it, we saw the Change.org petitions of them going after Rotten Tomatoes for Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. But honestly, it's a case of, oh, like this website is evil. It's like, no, it's just critics are doing their job, is to inform the public of whether or not a film is good or bad or worth their time. Yeah. Do they get it right? Not always. That's because critics are human. And, well, a film may not be well received when it comes out, but maybe finds new life in home video. And
yeah,
so
I knew
really,
of friends and family members that because of Batman v Superman and their absolute disappointment with that, they didn't see Wonder Woman in theaters. They refused to because of the amount of money that they spent towards Batman v Superman and their excitement. Thankfully, now it's come out on DVD. They've now seen it and they kind of regret that. But if you look at it from that perspective, that was probably the better choice for them to do.
Yep, and that's really the truth of it here, is that they may say, oh, Rotten Tomatoes sabotages movies, but really, this is the market deciding. You want Rotten Tomatoes to not sabotage your movie? Make good movies!
Advice.
Yeah, more or less.
I mean, to put it in a more eloquent terms, there's a good quote from Shakespeare, and I'll address this to Brett Ratner. The fault, dear Brett, is not in our websites, but in ourselves.
Yes, in fact. Alex, anything you want to add on to this discussion?
Well, in terms of did Rotten Tomatoes hurt this particular movie season, I'm going to say mostly probably not. There was a lot of pretty bad movies out this season. Yeah. I mean, Alien Covenant was kind of the kickoff to it, but you also had really stupid ideas like the Emoji Movie, which was just a hollow cash-in attempt to try and be the Lego Movie. In fact, most people say it was a ripoff of both Toy Story and the Lego Movie. And, you know, and of course, you also had some movies that were just too damn expensive, such as The Mummy and King Arthur, that should have been made for a whole lot less money. This article
actually also cites is King Arthur could have done better if not for the bad review scores. And I haven't seen the movie. I've seen the trailer.
You're not missing much.
Yeah, really, there's more problems than just Rotten Tomatoes. Sorry.
Yeah. You are not missing a thing.
Just that, and again, that movie was just way too expensive for its own good. It was, a lot of critics have said this, that the movie at worst is probably a bit average, but at the end of the day, it probably just was too expensive for its own good, and that's why it's tanked so hard.
And I also can't help but wonder if, like, The Mummy, the reason why it got such a high budget, it was because, again, they wanted to launch that damn cinematic universe. And since Dracula Untold didn't do it, they decided, well, The Mummy will do it. And from what I understand, The Mummy didn't do it either.
Yeah, and I think Tom Cruise had a fair amount to do with why the budget on The Mummy also kind of skyrocketed a bit. And, you know, just overall, the movie season's been pretty poor, I feel like. So I'm not going to fault Rotten Tomatoes. And in the grand scheme of things, maybe just a tiny bit. This is not me saying kill Rotten Tomatoes. This is not me, saying that Rotten Tomatoes is wholly responsible. I'm sure there are a subset of people who do just look at the aggregated score and say, well, okay, this movie doesn't sound like it's going to be good, so I'm going to skip it. But again,
even, that's reviewers that we've covered who will ultimately go in with negative, positive. Like, they're only interested in writing the negative review, not necessarily a positive one.
Yeah, but that's more of, I think, of a symptom of the greater problems that the movie industry is facing right now. It's creative stagnation, overinflated movie ticket prices, the changing in the whole media landscape. Right now, we got Netflix, we got Hulu, we got video on demand, we got Redbox, we got so many options to watch movies so much cheaper now, especially with Netflix, where you can probably watch more niche stuff that would never get into the main theaters or would get very small screenings at best. It's just like people, and of course also just people suck at movie theaters now. It's just, can we all say that? I think people are on their phones, they talk, they're loud. It's terrible to go to the theater most of the time. This is why I don't like going.
I can remember being a kid and it being an exciting experience, and now being as an adult, the worst thing that I had to worry about 5 to 10 years ago was kids being in the theater and wanting to run up and down and all that. But now you have people texting in the middle of the theater. You have people who are, granted, I'm a talker in the theater. Every single person on this panel can attest to that. I've done it with them, and I'm sure that that's probably annoyed them to some extent, but there are people I've met in theaters that are far worse than me. And so at that point, like, that happens. The other thing too is that it is an expensive procedure, and unless you're absolutely committed to that movie, you must go see it. A lot of people are just looking at it and going, yeah, I'm just gonna save my money and go to the movies that I know will be good, rather than the movies that might be good. I might just wait until they get Netflix.
Yeah, or the movies that are like experience, right? I think people will still want to go to theaters to see Marvel movies or Star Wars movies, just the kind of big spectacle movies that really fit on the big screen first and foremost, where I feel like a lot of the dramatic films that, would have done fine 20 years ago, 30 years ago, are going to slowly be phased out more for just hitting to Netflix a lot sooner, or hitting DVDs and Blu-rays a lot sooner. Just because, it's expensive to go to the movies, so you're just going to want to make it worth your while.
Yeah, you're more looking for that sure bet. I mean, for a perfect example between you and me, around the time when I actually took my vacation, you and I were supposed to go see 2 separate movies. One of them was Detroit, and the other was The Dark Tower. Like, we were interested in the trailers, but then we saw the reviews for it and I was on vacation. So at that point, we both kind of sat there and went, yeah, I don't think Detroit's going to be a good thing for me. So maybe not go see that in the theaters. And then on top of that, with Dark Tower, because of the bad scores, we just kind of looked at it and went, maybe a Netflix review.
Am I the only one who actually liked Dark Tower?
I can't say because I'd be walking in blind. I don't know the book series or anything like that, so I'd be walking in blind.
I didn't either, but I really enjoyed the film. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I'm just like, am I like the outlier here who actually liked it?
Well, I actually didn't know that you gave it a 5 out of 5. That just encourages me to go and see it. So that already gets me stoked because, well, you and I have had such interesting discussions on things like cough, cough, Ghostbusters, cough, cough. So there you go.
Just for me, I'm not a huge Stephen King fan anyway, so it has to be a lot for me to go out and watch
it. And I was not going to go see it. It just wasn't going to happen. It was not in the stars.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure your wife is very thankful for that, because I'm sure she doesn't want you up and down pacing all night.
This is true. I'd probably get grounded. So final thoughts before we move on, because we're actually running out of time. We're actually down to like the last half hour and we actually have a discussion to go through.
Yep. I do have one quick final thought, and I'll just say it because I don't want to ramble. I think also another thing that could really, really ding a movie is obviously cast choicing. Alex made a really good point with The Mummy, in the sense of their budget skyrocketed because they chose
Tom Cruise,
because they chose Tom Cruise. I don't think he's that great of an actor. So on top of it, I feel that when producers and directors and casting starts to become a thing, and then they start actually choosing these actors and actresses who are going to play these roles, I think who they choose also plays a huge role, because actors and actresses have their reputations, and if one particular one has a really bad reputation for being a crappy actor, then that's going to really, really affect people's decisions on whether or not they want to go see a film.
Or if that actor or actress has a lot of controversy surrounding them.
And on top of it,
Tom Cruise in particular, I remember a lot of people actually saying, because of the controversy surrounding him at the time, that did affect the ticket sales for War of the Worlds.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. But yeah, that was just
the whole infamous jump on the couch and became a crazy person kind of thing. And a lot of people actually were saying that War of the Worlds did a significant decrease the following week after the admission of Scientology and all that.
So completely forgot about that. But yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to say, because there are a few movies that are coming out like from now to the end of the year that seem very, very good, but I'm just like, oh, I don't really like that actor. He's not all that great. I'm not spending $10. The end.
Exactly. All right, well, let's move on into the next story, which is kind of going back into other material from last week. So last week we covered that Colin Trevorrow is no longer doing episode 9, and in fact, J.J. Abrams is going to be rehelming it. But since then, John Landis has been interviewed and given his thoughts on not just the problems with episode 9, but with the problems that Lucasfilm has had as a whole. Because not only did we have Colin Trevorrow leave as the director of episode 9. If people remember earlier, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, directors of the Lego movie, actually were slated to do the Han Solo film and also 21 Jump Street. They were fired from the Han Solo movie, and Ron Howard was put in their place. I believe he's been set as the Han Solo movie director now.
Mm-hmm. And this was during production as well, so they had already started working on it.
70% through the film.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, they basically had to start up from there with Ron Howard. And so John Landis, in an interview having a wide range, actually did have this to say, and I'll just go ahead and read the quote. "I have many things that I'm working on. Whether or not they'll ever become real, I don't know. I know, Joe Dante and myself and a few other guys I know are in the same position. They're not hiring people who have opinions. They think he knows what he's doing. I'm not hiring him. Look at Star Wars. They keep firing guys. Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Those guys are really talented. They're really funny and original guys. They shot 75% of the movie, and I got to tell you, it doesn't speak well for the new Lucasfilm. How many directors have they fired? 4. How many writers? 12. I didn't even know that. 12 writers have been fired from Star Wars, from Lucasfilm.
Good
as of
Lord.
right now. And he even goes later on to say it's very worrying. Remember when George Lucas said that he felt like he sold his kids into white slavery? Well, and we all remember the bitterness that Lucas was showing during the Lucasfilm purchase. He was not a happy camper, but at the same time, he was so done with doing Star Wars that it wouldn't have even mattered. He still would have sold it. But yeah, they've been having problems pretty much left and right ever since. I want to actually say a lot of the controversy has been happening since Rogue One, and the involvement that happened there. And now Lucasfilm is starting to get on the cases of Phil Lord, Chris Miller, as well as Colin Trevorrow, and silencing their vision. And then at that point they leave or get fired from the project because they wanted to do their own thing, and Lucasfilm is not allowing them to do so. So it's definitely one of those things that we were all concerned was going to happen, is that there was going to be, big lumbering executives breathing down their necks.
Yeah, more specifically one particular executive, Kathleen Kennedy.
Yes. She's the... Is she the head of Lucasfilm, or is she just a Disney exec?
She's the head of Lucasfilm. She was working at... She pretty much has been with Lucasfilm pretty much from the get-go. And so she was the one who was left in charge after Lucas sold the franchise to Disney. And she's pretty much been the arbiter deciding who gets to say or go in regards to... And I've even heard
she's had issues with not just the movies. She's apparently... I have not been able to confirm this, but she's had run-ins with the creator of Rebels a couple of times on the decisions that he's made with characters and whatnot. And also the shorts that came out this year that were based around female characters in there, but they eventually added like a couple of male characters. I hear she had a problem with that too. She wished they would have stuck with just female characters. So again, I can't confirm any of this because, this is behind the scenes talk. But I mean, already this is kind of worrisome that we've had these issues. And look, I like JJ, and I'm with you, Brinton. I didn't hate episode 7. I saw the problems that people had, but I didn't have the same problems. But when you look at who they're hiring, JJ and Ron Howard, these are both very agreeable directors. these will actually work from a more corporate perspective.
Yes.
So at that point, it does make you kind of wonder, like, are they getting rid of the free thinkers amongst there and just going with the corporate yes men kind of thing? And here's the thing. I don't know if I necessarily agree entirely. I think JJ will do what's best, but he will also cater his vision and shape it around what they want. So it works in that regard. I would actually dare say Ron does this to an extent as well. He's not necessarily a corporate yes man. He'll do what like the minimum of what's required from the board that's hiring him, but I have seen him take those departures in his films. Whether they be small or large, he's done them. So I don't know. I think that there's at least some merit to what's being said here. Where are you guys standing on it?
Well, it definitely is a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Okay. Yeah, I do think Landis has a point here, and I know Landis really hasn't been super active since the 80s. A lot of that was from the fallout of what happened on the Twilight Zone set, but he definitely is, I think, voicing a legitimate concern that maybe Disney and Lucasfilm are now becoming too much by committee, which is the whole reason Lucas was so stubbornly independent from the Empire Strikes Back on. Yet, whatever you think, love, hate the prequels, he stubbornly wanted to do it his way, and whether or not you think that warranted worked out well, worked out terribly, that's the way he wanted it. He wanted to do it by his creative vision, and Lucas is from the 70s when a lot of that kind of rebellious filmmaker, devil may care attitude was starting to rise because of the collapse of the old studio system. So it was a very different time. It was a lot more experimental, and certainly Lucas began working in experimental films like THX 1138, American Graffiti to a lesser extent. I mean, even Star Wars was essentially experimental for its time. So
yeah.
I think that's where Landis
experimental for its time. I remember, like, my mom went and saw the Star Wars when it came out in theaters, and she still to this day remembers people saying this movie is going to fail. Like, the things that like we say about films this day was what was being said about Star Wars 40 years ago.
Oh yeah, I mean, back in that day, it was Star Wars was supposed to be George Lucas's epitaph for his career.
And I remember there was the famous story of how after they got done shooting, Mark Hamill like went off the set and went to a movie theater that was showing one of the early trailers, and then pretty much at the end of the trailer it said like coming this summer, and then someone in the audience shouted, and coming to late night cable television 6 months later.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess my thoughts on the matter kind of branch in two specific directions. If this is happening at Lucasfilm, at Disney, let's just say Disney. I'm not going to specifically say Lucasfilm because Disney's also had some issues with Marvel films. Dare I quote Edgar Wright being let go from Ant-Man. We've seen these kinds of things happen, and I'm actually kind of wondering if this isn't just a Disney problem. I'm wondering if it's more of a Hollywood problem too, because I can't help but wonder if maybe some of the other issues that we're having with these other films and other companies are stemming from this as well, because we get to hear about, these writers are leaving or these directors are leaving, and that's why this Warner Brothers DC film isn't necessarily up to snuff kind of thing. I'm not throwing out examples, but I mean, you can sum up what you think is in there. The other thing too that makes me consider that makes me kind of question is, are directors just becoming more abrasive in this generation than they were when the greats were around? Because I mean, here's the other thing that I'm questioning about is when you look at the directors that are considered they'll play well with others. We're talking people that are veterans. They've been doing movies for quite a while now, whether it be they started small and then went big, or, they had connections or whatever. Ron Howard is considered respectable. James Cameron is. Steven Spielberg is when he actually does direct a film. Michael Bay, even though I don't like what he's doing with Transformers, is considered to be kind of a corporate yes man when it comes to directing and producing and whatnot. So is it just that the new generation of directors is more abrasive and therefore corporate just can't get along with them? I don't know. I think there's a number of things to consider, and maybe it's just we've hit a point where Hollywood's kind of going through some massive changes.
Well,
and
considering that,
were.
Well, yeah, especially considering that the way movies are being made now, especially with the rise of things like Amazon and Netflix,
yeah,
it's the same thing that happened when the studio system died. It's the same thing that happened when television was coming about, where the way content is being made is changing now. And I'm going to call it right here. In about 20 years or so, Hollywood's no longer going to be the central place where films are made anymore.
No.
Because that's how it is, that anybody can get, even with just a smartphone nowadays, anyone can make a movie. There have even been like feature-length films shot on smartphones before. So that it's kind of the case that Hollywood is changing. You're going to get a lot more of the renegades who will come up through some sort of independent idea, especially considering that Lucasfilm was headhunting directors known for very unique approaches. I mean, on the one hand, you have someone like Colin Trevorrow, which, okay, I had my misgivings about Jurassic World, but for a film like a franchise like Star Wars, he would be a director that would look like a good fit.
Yeah.
But then you go and try to get someone like Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who have a very unique style, both with the Lego Movie, with 21 and 22 Jump Street. It's very much one of those. I mean, I can see like, oh, they're big names that people recognize, but when you look at the films they've made, it's a case of, what made you think they would be able to do something like Star Wars?
The Disney branding moniker is what you're saying. They wouldn't work in that kind of public branding.
Yeah, and that's the mistake that Lucasfilm made here, is that they're going after names that the public recognizes without really thinking, is this director's style actually something that works with our brand? Now, Colin Trevorrow, there it's a little more disappointing because he seems like the kind of director that, okay, he seems like someone who may play ball, and maybe there was some sort of dispute between him and Kathleen Kennedy. But at the same time, you have people like Rian Johnson, who is a bit of a renegade filmmaker in his own right, but he's just barely wrapped production on Episode 8 without incident. And so it really is a case of, are they looking for directors that just have name recognition, or are they really thinking, okay, what director from what we've seen is actually going to be a good fit for Star Wars? And that's kind of the mistake they're making here. They're looking for names. They're not really looking for someone who's right for the job.
Exactly. I mean, because if we were looking at, directors that could make a sci-fi fantasy like Star Wars work, I mean, I remember a lot of people pointing out, is it Edwards, Gareth Edwards? Gareth Edwards. I mean, he was not the guy that we would have considered to do Rogue One. He didn't. I mean, at that point, he had Godzilla under his belt. So the other one that I also wouldn't have considered was, again, Phil Lord and Chris Miller. In fact, I think when that got announced, I laughed it off. I'm just like, that's not going to work at all. That's going to be dumb. And I don't even think we knew what the movie was. That they were just we just knew that they were being brought in. So at that point, I'll admit it was a little bit of a shock to see that they were part of the Han Solo movie, and that they got through a majority of production. But yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that we're going to see a reshaping here, but also I think you're partially right. They're looking more for name recognition than they are about actually trying to change and innovate. Otherwise, we would have seen whole other names and other directors for these movies. In fact, Neil Blomkamp, why was he ever brought up? He's been doing sci-fi for the last couple of movies that he's done.
Yes, so but that raises the other thing, especially when you consider under Lucas's tenure, he wanted to bring in people like Spielberg, but also James Cameron and also David Lynch to do Star Wars films. And under this tenure of Lucasfilm, I cannot imagine any of them thinking, hey, let's give David Lynch a call and have him do a Star Wars film. They wouldn't do that. And so that also speaks where with Disney and Lucasfilm, they want what they have with Marvel. Movies that make a lot of money, but more or less feel the same from film to film. Whereas Lucas was very much about having something that felt different each time, even with the prequels and their many, many problems. And so that's the other thing, is that Disney is trying to have Lucasfilm and Star Wars be like Marvel, where every movie feels the same, they get directors that play ball, and they basically have a steady cash factory every year.
Exactly. So Alex and Brinton, you guys want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think that is kind of the concern, though. I mean, it makes sense for Star Wars to have some kind of consistency, but that there is the big concern that it's going to get too samey, and you're going to lose the magic of what made Star Wars fun in the first place, and it's just going to feel like a corporate assembly line cash machine, and that's, I think, what we're all worried about here.
Yeah, I'm like, in particular to Star Wars, I mean, we can all make the argument Lucas didn't direct every single one of them either. I don't remember who the director, I can never remember the name of the director who did Empire.
Irving Kershner.
Irving Kershner.
Thank you. You could definitely tell between Star Wars and Empire that we were getting two completely different visions. But, I mean, here's the thing. Lucas directed both episodes 4 and 6, and 5 is considered the superior of that trilogy. And the same thing can be said of the prequel. They were all directed by Lucas, weren't they?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, they were all directed by Lucas, and therefore his vision just didn't make it work. I'll admit, I kind of liked the idea of bringing in different directors when they announced that for the Star Wars universe, but now that they're letting them go, it just makes me wonder, what did they do wrong? What did they disagree with Lucasfilm on that they wanted to do that could have been awesome in film? And actually, I'm glad you brought it up too, Romney. Rian Johnson is an interesting name to have in that. And yeah, his film's done. I think it's almost done editing and getting ready to go into theaters.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, why did he have such smooth sailing?
Yeah, and that could that could speak to the way Rian Johnson approaches his work, because yeah, he is very much, he's not avant-garde per se, but he is the kind of director who has a unique vision. But maybe it just could be a simple case of chemistry where he just got along better with the people at Lucasfilm than, say, Lord and Miller. And so it could be a case of that there could be a possibility for the best of both worlds. And so it's just, these are the growing pains of this new era of Lucasfilm. Although, as we're discussing this, I'm just reminded of the line from Revenge of the Sith, where it's like, you've become the very thing you swore to destroy. And I'm thinking, yep, the prequels almost kind of predicted this, where Star Wars, which was meant to be a renegade franchise, has become the very thing it swore to destroy.
Exactly. Brinton, anything you want to add?
Nope, I concur with everything that has been stated.
Yeah. So I think we've pretty much kind of wrapped this subject up. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I might actually skip over the other story that we have and keep that for next week, because I have a feeling it'll need a little bit more time than what we have right now. But I do want to get to this discussion because a listener brought this one up, and I wanted to get into it because they felt we didn't cover this when we covered the story last week. So if you didn't watch our last week's episode, we covered the infamous moment of PewDiePie dropping an N-bomb during his PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds stream, and thus creating another media firestorm, making a dozen other YouTubers just facepalm and get ready for the second YouTube adpocalypse to happen right off the bat. And so this question, according to the listener, we didn't cover, which is, as a YouTuber, when you guys see incidents like PewDiePie's recent streaming disaster, or another one that he brings up is the whole incident involving Alex Maurer, I can't remember the Bitcoin service that happened for Counter-Strike. And when you see stuff like that, how do you find yourself reacting, and does it ever make you change the direction that you're taking your content? Not just the channel, the content is the emphasis there. And so I actually got the agenda into these guys' hands hours ago, so they've had a little bit of time to consider it. But for me, I mean, when I saw I'm going to use the PewDiePie incident because I've covered all the other ones, and you guys know my viewpoints on the matter. But when I saw the PewDiePie incident immediately happen, obviously my first reaction was, it's just like, dang it, PewDiePie, you're screwing things up again. And I actually did wonder if we were going to get even more advertisers leaving Google and thus hurting YouTubers even more, because they're more and more videos would be considered not ad friendly. But more along the lines of how it affected me, which was simply this: is I looked at PewDiePie's PewDiePie subscriber count, and it's gone down since then. And I'm kind of happy about that. I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of happy about it. It was at 58 mil before the incident. Now it's kind of hovering in the 57 million. So it's not gone down by much, but I'm kind of happy that happened, so that, you know, PewDiePie can actually have a consequence to his actions. But I looked at that number, and the thing I'll admit pissed me off is there are 57 million people on YouTube that subscribe to him. And some of those are ardent defenders, and some of them are not. Some of them just kind of go there in the hopes that maybe they'll be able to get additional subscribers because they're subscribed to PewDiePie. And then others that are just kind of there because they want to see when the next big controversy happens. And yeah, a good portion of them are kids, because he is covering video game content. And so I'm sure there's a good chunk of them that are just kids who are looking to see what on earth PewDiePie will do next. And I get, it's a difficult thing to admit, but I actually did get angry and resentful against Felix. I am happy that Felix has had the success that he's had on YouTube. I am happy that Mark has had it. I'm happy that Jack has had it. I'm happy that Ken has had it. Anybody who's had success on YouTube, I'm always happy to see that happening, because it is an awesome thing to see it work. But then I see PewDiePie spouting off N-bombs and just screaming to myself, you know, I'll bet a lot of the people that watch him are family people. And I build my content specifically towards family people. I get that, you know, sometimes family environments, you don't want certain elements. I try very hard not to curse or anything like that, to be able to accommodate as many viewers as I possibly can. And when he actually did that, it just made me sit there and go, the sad part is that they will unsubscribe to him, but whether or not they'll give my content a look, I can't guarantee it. And that pisses me off, because if I had that kind of an audience, I would not be floundering it or squandering that opportunity by doing things like PewDiePie has done. In my response to YouTube Heroes, I would not be going in full Nazi attire to watch a Hitler speech. Okay. I would make my point clear in a completely different way. And so it does irritate me that that's the thing that happens, or that we get attacks from people like Alex Maurer. But does it change the direction of my content? No. In fact, it reinforces it, because at that point, I look at so many of the other content creators that don't do this and literally see how much potential audience they could have if they did and decided to go the way that I do. I do have adult-based content, but I also have family-based content. And so at that point, I try to accommodate as many people as I can. This is why I've never devoted myself to just being a WoW channel, a gaming channel, anything like that, because I'm an all-around geek. So my guarantee to people who come to my channel is, you may not be able to find every single video you enjoy, but you'll at least be able to find something that will be able to cater to you. So that's really how I reacted to incidences like that. I kind of want to start with Brinton, because you're kind of the part-time YouTuber. You do Let's Play content. Guys, I'm not saying anything bad about Brinton, because he has different aspirations than everybody else, and that's fine. He can pursue it. But you kind of got a more simplistic viewpoint. When you see stuff like this happen, does it affect or change the direction of your channel or your content?
To answer your question, Drac, in all honesty, I too had similar feelings that you had when the news came out, and after even watching the part of his stream where he said that word, it frustrated me, but it also had to remind me that I do this as a hobby, and I am part of this community very much as somebody who just wants to share his experiences and how video games have been like a blessing in my life. And so I had to I calmed down very quickly, and I was like, okay, I can't be too mad, because obviously I'm not working full time on YouTube to make my income, but it did make me think about you three in the sense of very much what you said, Adam, and Nathan and I were even speaking about this as well. And a lot of what I'm about to say are things that Nathan has said, because I completely agree with him. And the thing that he said is, I hate how somebody like him can have an audience of 57 million people and say things like that, and he receives almost little to no consequence. And then there are people like us who, oh wait, and he also added on top of it, people like PewDiePie who say things like that on the internet, and literally all his content is just gibberish, screaming nonsense.
Yep.
With little to no effort made whatsoever, and he retains afterwards 57 million subscribers. And then there are people like you three, and he included me in the mix too, but I say people like you three who make high quality content more or less full time and are sitting on hundreds.
Yep.
And he said, how is that fair? How is that how is that fair? Because I've watched Alex's videos, I've watched Robney's videos, I've watched your videos, Adam, and you guys put in so much work into what you do. And I'm not saying that I don't, but you guys do it full time. You guys are trying to make this living. You guys are trying to make names for yourself like PewDiePie has. And it just made him really, really upset because it's not fair. And then from like a social justice warrior point of view, like he caters to an international audience. Okay, yep. It's not just his country, it's not just Europe, it's the entire freaking planet. You cannot say things like that. And there are people who are defending him saying, oh, but he really, like, he said sorry, like in the moment. No, he didn't. Like, yes, he did say an apology after the fact, but it was like days later.
And I would dare say he gave a better apology with the Washington Post scandal than he did with this.
Yes, exactly. So ultimately, after everything that went down, I would say that the direction of my content has not changed. I would say more the culture of my content has changed. And the fact that I'm trying to watch very much what I say more than ever. Because even kind of like looking back on my Super Mario Galaxy 2 Let's Play, I realized, Super Mario still is very much it caters to children regardless of age.
Yep.
It caters to a lot of people regardless of age, because Super Mario it's not that old. It's like 30 years old. So I mean people from like 30 to birth know what Super Mario is. It's iconic. And I realized, I had some pretty strong adult language. I said some things that out of like frustration from playing the game, obviously. And it just made me realize, I need to cut back on the cussing. Obviously, I cuss in my personal life. If you've noticed, I may have said a cuss word once or twice even tonight, but it's like, I gotta watch what I say on the internet, because again, I do this as a hobby, and there are people in my professional life that are going to look me up online, and I need to be able to, of course, separate my professional life from my YouTube life, but they're going to become intertwined regardless of what happens. And I need to know that people can see me as a professional person at work and out of work. And so the culture of my content has changed. I'm watching what I'm saying better. I'm going to use alternative language instead of cussing outright. And that's what I've really taken from this PewDiePie scandal version XXXXX, because I don't even know how many.
Anything crappy happens on YouTube, really.
Exactly. Because I mean, Nathan got to know me through my YouTube channel. Him and I just recently became licensed foster parents, and somebody that we are working with from DCFS, they saw in our home study that I do YouTube content, and so she looked me up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so I mean, there I am. She only saw like my intro video of me singing a parody of a Michael Bublé song, but still, if she like went further and saw some of my videos and saw me cussing and stuff, I mean, I'm a foster parent now. Mm. I have to watch stuff like that. And so that is the direction that I'm taking my channel. I'm not changing the content, I'm changing the culture.
Yep. And to answer, I mean, I appreciate Nathan's comments on that matter. I mean, the unfortunate reality of things is that sometimes life isn't fair. And unfortunately, that's just what you have to make work with it. But, you know, it's just like Alfred said, it's not how we fall down, it's how we get back up again.
Yeah.
So at that point, like when crap like this happens and we get knocked down, and for the record, like to all of our subscribers of our various channels, we're not knocking you guys. We love the communities that have been able to be established around us. Do we wish they were bigger? Sure, we really do, because we do think that we would provide content that would be equally as awesome as stuff that you guys watch on an everyday basis. But it's just one of those things of more how you take disappointing things like somebody doing better than you and reshape that to fuel your drive, fuel your channel, your direction, all that. Romney, considering you're kind of the veteran, because I think you've got a good couple of years on all of us on YouTube. When you see stuff like this, I mean, does it affect the direction or of the channel or the content that you provide?
Honestly, with the content, excuse me, with the conduct and actions of other YouTubers, I honestly don't really pay much attention to it. I pretty much just go the approach of, I'm just going to do what I want to do at my own pace. I mean, from the outset, I kind of adopted the limiting swearing policy that Linkara kind of follows, and it's not even so much, oh, I'm trying to keep it clean to look presentable. It's just more case of, okay, well, rather than resorting to the swears, let's find a more creative way to voice my opinions. Yeah. And there's only been a few times where I've actually been worked up while watching a movie, but even then, that's because I write out all of my opinions ahead of time. I work from a script for all my videos. There's barely any time where I do anything off the cuff. And so the actions of PewDiePie, because honestly, when it comes to stuff like that, I don't pay attention to any of it. I'm not even in remotely the same sphere as the kind of stuff PewDiePie does, so it just doesn't really get on my radar. There's only been one time where I've actually changed my content as a result of something happening on YouTube, and that was in the wake of the Viacom lawsuit. That is like the only time where I've actually made any active changes. Of course, with the Viacom lawsuit, that was for good reason. I didn't want my channel getting taken down. And so that's why all of my early Monster Clash videos had no clips of any of the movies, because I was super paranoid that if I used any clips, I'd get taken down, because that's how YouTube was back then. It's not as bad now, but it's starting to get that bad again, which is why I've started doing other things. But as for like the way PewDiePie conducts himself, it's very much, the way I look at it, I'm no longer trying to chase, the ones at the top. It's very much, I got tired of trying to copy what was popular. I got tired of trying to climb the ladder, so to speak. I kind of adopted a mantra similar to what Captain Disillusion follows, where it's a case of, if I just make the videos at a pace that I'm comfortable with and just give it my all and produce quality content, the audience will find it eventually. It's very much a case of, rather than trying to manufacture or change stuff based on current trends, it's a case of, I'm just going to do what I want to do make the content I want to create, make sure I'm making it as best as I can, and it will find its audience. It may not be within the first week of upload, it may be down the line, but that's just really how I approach doing my YouTube videos now.
Okay. And then Alex, I guess this is kind of a two-pronged thing for you and me, because you have your own channel and then you and me both run a channel. So at that point, I would say first answer from your perspective, and then you and me will kind of try to come up with an answer, because we have not had a time to collaborate on this at all.
I would not say PewDiePie's made me change at all. Maybe definitely make me a lot more aware when I'm streaming to be very wary of what I say, but I've always tried to be, because I've mentioned obviously so many times before, including tonight, I hold down a part-time job, so I always try to be very careful, well, not to name said company I work for, because that can bite you in the butt if you're not careful. So, so I'm always trying to be careful in regards to what happens on my job. And as far as my content goes, no, not really, because PewDiePie and I are in different fields. I do Let's Plays occasionally. I don't really live stream any games, and I don't do face cam. Almost did once, but didn't win against it. But so, to be honest, PewDiePie hasn't really affected me. The closest that's come, perhaps, in my more sphere of influence here is there's a very prominent anime reviewer, content critic here on YouTube by the name of, well, Digibro. I think anybody who hears me talking about this will know exactly what I'm talking about. A few months ago, he released a video, it was a very long, like half hour, maybe an hour even, rant about his displeasure of how the anime reviewing circle community here is on YouTube. And he expressed all the reasons why he dislikes any kind of other style of video. And he wasn't singling anyone out in particular. It was a very broad, very generalized rant on his part, so I'm not faulting him too hard on it, but I could tell probably maybe some of my videos would fall into his category of, say, stuff he would not appreciate as a content reviewer. But, you know, and again, Digibro is a pretty big standing. He's got a lot of subscribers, a lot more than me. He's got a pretty big following, and seeing the like to dislike ratio, it was pretty much.
Give me a litmus here. Is he bigger than Bennett, or?
Probably bigger than Bennett, but Bennett's had the advantage of being on that guy with the glasses. Yeah. Digibro's just a long YouTuber. Although I also recently found out he and I also have a history. I don't think he remembers me, in fairness, but that's another story for another day. But, and it's just sort of like, I can't let his remarks get to me. When I started doing this on my channel, I made it very clear what kind of content I was setting out to produce. And my channel has changed, but it's changed organically through me wanting to, through me experimenting, through me trying new things. And that's the way I wanted it to be, and that's the way I'm happy with it. So I'm not going to let people like PewDiePie dictate where my channel goes. I'm going to do the videos my way.
Yeah, and I would actually say, like, from our perspective, like from the channel that we both run, which is an active Let's Play channel. I think we've done streaming once or twice on it. At that point, kind of, I would say that the same philosophy that goes with mine is simply this, is that I'm a big proponent of constructive criticism. I will take the constructive criticism and I will make it work the best as I can possibly do. So when I do actually get constructive feedback, I try to implement it as best as I can. And by constructive, I mean you're actually trying to help me out, not that you're just calling me a douche. Okay, because that's not constructive. That's just you being, well, what you called me. So at that point, that's what ultimately I feel shapes my channel as well as Draken Shadow. In the fact that if we got constructive feedback that we need to do this particular series or do this particular subject, that's more what fuels it, not necessarily what some YouTuber controversy does. I mean, we've brought up YouTube controversies, but it hasn't been something that makes us go, oh, well, we better stop what we're doing. I think I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex. Most of the time, it's just if we have to reshape things because of adpocalypse, or I wouldn't even say adpocalypse because we haven't really reshaped because of that. But like if we have to worry about constant copyright strikes or something like that, that's what would change our content, not necessarily some whim PewDiePie is creating.
Yeah, really, it's going to be more about the mechanics, and it's like what Romney has also said, where he was worried about kind of the fallout from the Viacom lawsuit. Yeah, content ID, the concept of content ID or getting strikes has scared me off from doing a couple videos. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, those are powers well beyond my control. That's all down to how YouTube and Google shape their policies on their platform. I can't do that. I can't do anything about that except hope that it can change sometime through just being vocal about it. But otherwise, it's like PewDiePie. I can't control PewDiePie, but at the end of the day, I don't follow him anyway. So what do I care what he does on his channel?
And I mean, you could technically say that, I mean, certain things have affected our channel because of the way Nintendo does things. That does affect us. And actually, it's affected our Let's Play flow because, correct me if I'm wrong, we really have never had a time where two Nintendo-based Let's Plays have ever occurred side by side.
I think that's just more down to our scheduling. That's just more down to our scheduling more so than Nintendo, because you and I, even though we were probably never going to make any kind of monetization because of Nintendo's policies, we still want to play these games because we enjoy them. We have fun and we want to share the enjoyment.
Yeah, that's more where I was going with it, which is like the thing is we love Nintendo and Nintendo's a part of our childhood, but we also have so many other games that we enjoy and we think you guys would enjoy a playthrough of. And so that's why in a lot of cases, you do have those occasional Nintendo playthroughs, but then you look at the overall amount of content that Draken Shadow has, and most of it isn't Nintendo. Most of it is other companies or Sony or other dedicated stuff that we could probably monetize, unlike Nintendo videos. So I think that's really what affects things, is like that constructive feedback or adjusting to whatever YouTube's doing at that given moment. So with that though, we actually are overtime. It's been a long time since we've done that, guys. We are overtime tonight on the podcast, so we just need to go ahead and wrap things up. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast tonight. And if you guys want to get the various opinions or reach out to these guys and ask them to expand on what they've already shared tonight, or even better, check out the awesome content that they provide. Brinton Volley, you're kind of the guest podcast panelist tonight. Where can they find you?
So I have my Let's Play channel, which I have spoken of this evening. It is Brinton Volley Gaming, which is right here.
Yep.
Just because my name is so weird. And then you can find me on Twitter at bvolley01. That is where I give most of my announcements for my channel. Obviously, I do have proper videos, but you will find out when certain videos are coming out if you just follow me on Twitter. And then I also just tweet about random crap that goes on in my life, hence the pumpkin spice lattes for days. And very shortly, I will be starting up my Final Fantasy VII again and completing that Let's Play properly, which I am excited to do.
And to those who are screaming out for, we want more DMC, it's coming, guys. It's coming. We don't know when, but it's coming.
It will happen.
Yes. It is in the pipeline. So, Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do people get a hold of you for your content?
Well, the best place you can find me is my YouTube channel, Shadow Blazer 3000, where I do produce anime content, anime reviews, lists, and so on. And like I said, the occasional Let's Play for the fun of it. And if you want to follow me on social media and be up to date of when a new video comes out, follow me on Twitter at AlexJShort. And if I might just add a little something else that I weirdly stumbled upon tonight. If anybody's familiar with the YouTube channel / website Looper, they're you're kind of your average top 10 kind of list site channel. So I stumbled upon one of their articles, which is video games you didn't realize were based on anime, one of them actually mentions .hack, and it just so happens in the art in their section on .hack, they actually hyperlinked to my video where I break down the entire franchise. This is one of the strangest things that's ever happened to me. I'm so floored right now.
That's
nice.
awesome, Alex. Congratulations.
Very nice. All right. So, Stephen Romney, how do people get a hold of you to share their opinions with you, as well as see your awesome content, as well as see your brand new series and whatnot?
Well, you can always find me here on YouTube at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/RomNewsReviews. I am also on Twitter at RomNewReviews. And you can also find Rhapsody in Cinema and a few re-uploads of certain videos coming soon at the second home, vid.me/StudioGhost. Those are the places where you can find me. I'm still getting the bugs worked out regarding VidMe. It's taking a while. And for this week's Romney's recommendation, I'm going to recommend an animated series I recently started watching. Note that I said animated, not anime, because this is actually a French series that is currently available on Verve called Last Man. Now, the basic premise of Last Man
I saw
is...
an advertisement for this, yeah.
Yes, the basic premise of Last Man, you have the main character, Richard Aldana. He's basically a bum who knows how to fight. I'm butchering it, but he's very much one of those people where he clearly can't hold down a job because he's too much of a troublemaker, and then things start going really down the tubes, and it's him having to react to it. And the reason I find it fascinating, because I always find it fascinating when a Western animation house decides to make a series for adults that is actually trying to tell a serious, compelling story. It has really good action, a lot of good sci-fi fantasy elements, and the character design and the animation, it all looks really, really good. So that's this week's Romney's recommendation is Last Man, available both subbed and dubbed on Verve.
All right. If you guys want to get a hold of me, the three best ways to be able to do so. First of all, you can follow me on Twitter at Drac2326. That's probably the best place to ask questions and whatnot, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. You can also check out all of the awesome YouTube content that I provide aside from podcasting. Just recently, this week, I've had actually 2 Drac tries go up, one in the place of a vlog of my latest addiction, which is Metroid Samus Returns, as well as literally today, I also put up my Drac tries for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. So you guys can check out all of those. And then also, as an added bonus, if you guys want to follow me also on Facebook, you can do so by searching for Drac LP. And there's now a brand new page that is dedicated to the Drac Let's Plays and the content that I provide on my channel. And Alex is grinning right now because he made this suggestion a while back and I didn't listen. So on top of that, though, we would more appreciate it if you guys would show your support to the podcast. And the first place that you can do so is by going to geekyweek.podomatic.com and liking the page so that you will get access to our RSS feed, which is where you can get current episodes, old episodes. We're going to try and keep as many of those things up as we possibly can. But, well, it is costly. And unfortunately, I'm a YouTuber with a budget. So it may or may not work, but you guys can show your support by supporting the RSS feed. And I'm also working hard to get the iTunes feed ready and raring to go. There's some things that I need to do on my end also that need to happen for that to be more solid. So geekyweek.podomatic.com. And then you can also support us on social media. First of all, with Facebook by searching for Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions and liking it. And also on Twitter at GeekyNRO. And you'll get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, the stories that we're going to be covering. We're also going to be reaching out to you guys for you guys' input on the stories. I know I've been talking about that for a while, but I do want to actually poll you guys on your thoughts on the stories and stuff like that. So those are obviously happening. And also, if you want to submit your own stories, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. We also do take your feedback and we do implement it to continue to strengthen and shape the podcast. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. We thank you guys so much for showing up, for enjoying the, well, inappropriate humor that some of us have displayed this evening. Well, okay, that's just me. But thanks once again for showing up, stopping by, continuing to like, comment, and subscribe to all of our various YouTube content, as well as the podcast itself. And of course, we will see you guys next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions. So for me, for Brinton, for Alex, and for Romney, we'll see you guys next time.